70 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take a book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So I guess in a lot of places, June is Pride Month. Where we are, most of the celebrations are actually in July, which I think is solely based on the weather. I don't know if that's actually true, but I would guess.
Yeah, I think that's accurate because our June is literally still terrible. Like,
it's January, they call it,
yes,
because it is freezing.
Yeah, it's still like 10, 15 degrees. So everybody heading outside for like a pride parade is not realistic. So normally it's near the end of July where we have celebrations. Now, we still did stuff like as a school in June.
Yeah, of course.
But
well, especially since school
is that
isn't. Yeah.
So
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So we did a full episode last year for Pride Month. This year, I know I've actually been in kind of a reading slump. So I don't actually have a whole lot of books to talk about or anything because I just haven't been reading as much, which is sad.
I've actually been reading quite a lot, but I've been in a very specific sort of book. It's been very trashy, romancy sort of a thing. So, yeah, it's been a certain type, and it's been stuff that I've sort of know what's going on, what's going to happen with it. I haven't wanted to dive into anything, like, unexpected.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So, so I've been reading a lot of, like, Karen Marie Moaning, if anybody has read stuff from her. She's great.
I've heard a lot, but I actually, I've heard about the Fever series.
I've been reading the Highlander series.
Okay.
Just big brawny Scotsmen flitting about everywhere. And it's hot. But yeah, so I haven't, I don't know, like, I feel like the same, like, sort of in a slump. Other than that, I have literally so many books that I had to bring home. Like, I probably have 12 books that I have to read for the new school year to figure out which one I'm going to study for my upcoming classes. So,
makes sense.
So yeah, I haven't been able to dive into anything new, especially, and like, I do try to hit some LGBTQ stuff, but it just hasn't happened. But I am gearing up for Heartstopper. That is in August, I believe.
Something like that. So I can't remember right now, but yeah.
So yeah, if you're not aware,
that'll be good.
If you're not aware, Heartstopper is a series on Netflix. But before it was a series on Netflix, it was a series of graphic novels by Alice Oseman. We actually did her first novel, Solitaire, back in February, I believe. So there is a new season being released of the Netflix series in August, I believe, and it is going to be amazing. I'm so excited. But yeah, we are going, like, I don't want to, I guess we're going to spoil next month's book later on because we have to. But there is going to be sort of a member of the LGBTQ. There's going to be an LGBTQ couple in that story for us to enjoy and sort of celebrate Pride that way.
Yeah, and I think that author specifically has, like, in one of her other books in the series, there is some trans representation as well. So, like, she does have, I feel like she has representation. I know I can't say for everybody, but I know it's an issue with some of the more popular authors that they don't represent as much as some people would like. But I think that this author, like one of her first series, she didn't really have much, but then as she's grown, she has really done better.
Yeah.
I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a little revelation later that ties into everything. If you've already read the book, you sort of know what we're talking about. But yeah, I think, and we've had the discussion before on representation and when is it enough, when is it pandering, and like what is how to make everybody happy, essentially.
Yeah, which we know is impossible, but like I know there's a lot of thoughts on especially this week's representation, and a lot of people have many feelings about it, which are all valid. And I guess we'll get into our thoughts on it when we get there.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, just a heads up as we get into this week, we're not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy.
Okay. So, this week we are reading chapters 65 to the end, which is chapter 82. It is our last week with A Court of Wings and Merlin.
So sad.
I'm so sad. So really we're getting, maybe not the end of Rhys and Feyre's story, but we're getting like a decent conclusion.
Yeah,
right? Definitely
not the end, because they play a big role in the next real book.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, last week, we had a lot, again, like you say, every single week, a lot happened. So, we had the rest of the High Lords meeting. We had some battles on the go. We had some back alley deals between Feyre and some creatures. We also had Elaine get her heart broken again because she's a dumbass and had to go see her fiance. And then he told her she was a piece of trash and he didn't want anything to do with her.
I kind of think she had to go. I don't think she had to be dressed as a human. That was dumb. But I do think she had to get this to heal.
Yeah. Jurian turns out is a good guy. Like, so much happening. And then, the Suriel died, the saddest thing on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
Then Ianthe died, which is, like, the best thing on the planet. So, like, we had a lot going on. The last thing that happened, though, was that, Elaine was tricked by the Cauldron's magic into believing that her fiancé had come to their camp for her, and she left, and now she's being held captive by Hybern in their camp. So Feyre is deciding, she has decided that she is going to go get her back, and Azriel is going with her.
Yeah.
So
it's large.
Yeah.
A large event.
It is, yes. So much stuff happened. So this week, so I guess at the end of last week shows Feyre using her shapeshifter gifts from Tamlin to morph and shapeshift into Ianthe, because she knows Ianthe is dead, but she's hoping. No one in camp knows yet. So she's gonna masquerade as Ianthe and try and walk right into the camp to get her sister back. So
fuck some shit up.
Yeah, and that's literally the very last thing that happened last week was her walking right into camp with Azriel as her shadow, which I actually think is not something that we've seen from his power yet, which I thought was a really cool addition. Like us getting to see him. Like, that's why he's a shadow singer. It's not because he can talk to shadows or, like, whatever. He can become shadow. which
yeah,
is
it's
neat.
really cool.
Yeah. So obviously, Feyre can look like Ianthe all she wants, but she also, in order to fool everybody, has to act like Ianthe.
Mm-hmm.
So, she thinks of what Ianthe used to be like, and started, like, sort of became her. So, like, this vain and preening and, like, quite horny, to be honest. She was always, like, looking to get her hooks into the next man.
Yeah.
And
it's true.
Right? And, like, she did manage to walk right past the first set of guards. Like, they didn't question it at all.
Yeah.
So, walking through, though, she thought that, like, the Hewn City / Court of Nightmares was bad. But she said that, like, comparing that to this camp made the Hewn City look, like, chaste. Like, there was all sorts of debauchery and stuff going on. They didn't really get into specifics, though.
Yeah, which, it doesn't sound like it's great.
No, but, like, I can only imagine, like, what? So are people just, like, straight up murdering each other? Like, what is happening in this camp to make it worse than the Hewn City?
Yeah, I, like I said, all I can really imagine is, like, what? Because I think she brings up Brannon and, what's this name?
Branna and Dagden.
Yeah, Brannon and Dagden, and what they did to the humans. And, like, that is the norm, basically. So, right. I don't really know what, like, I guess it just means they're murdering and torturing humans and maybe even, like, lesser fae, too.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so she keeps walking through the camp, and she can tell that the people at camp are celebrating. She's not sure what. But she hears someone screaming. So, like, their form of celebration are torturing other people. So,
good.
You know, great. She walks by and sees 3 children of the Blessed, so 3 humans, being tortured. And that sort of image reminded her of Claire better. And she says she felt like she couldn't just leave them there.
Mm-hmm.
So Jurian then sees and comes to get her and says that he's been looking for her, aka Hybern. But he shows up and he notices right away that it's not Ianthe. I don't know how, but
I don't either. I wonder if, like, is there something about him we don't know? I say that about everybody I know. It's exhausting. But, like, is there something about him that we don't know that's, like, But he immediately knows exactly who it is, too. Yeah. It's not like he's like, oh, you're not Ianthe, you're not acting like her, you're someone else. He's like, Feyre, that's you.
Yes.
I could tell.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the how?
But, like, I don't really get it either because he is human. He shouldn't have any sort of magic or anything, so I'm a little bit confused, but
yeah.
It's actually really funny because he literally says to her, he was like, were you smart enough to actually make sure she was dead before you did this?
Yeah.
And Feyre's like, yeah, she got what was coming to her. And Durian's like, yeah, no arguments here. But, like, I just love that he immediately was like, I know exactly who you are. Like, please tell me you were not dumb. But so Feyre asks where she is, obviously referring to Elaine, but Durian won't tell her, which is sort of immediately concerning for Feyre and also annoying, because she just wants to know.
Mm.
But he tells her then, I guess quietly, to act like she's trying to seduce him, since the real Ianthe had been trying for ages. So again, horny is not inaccurate.
Yeah. Which is like, why, but...
I know, he's a human. Why is she trying? Like,
like, I get that he is important, but it seems odd that she would go after a human.
Yeah, I agree with you. It does seem odd.
I don't understand.
But then he also tells her that Elaine is safe and untouched. So, like, don't stress about it. Because I'm assuming, the concern would be that maybe she wouldn't be untouched.
Yeah, maybe she's on a rack right now somewhere. Like, they don't know.
So Elaine, he tells her finally that, like, Elaine is in Hybern's tent. So Jurian plans to take her there by using, like, let's go have sex routine. So he just walks her right through the rest of the camp, essentially. Assuming his tent is near Hybern's, and therefore near Elaine. Mm-hmm. So he tells her to say aloud that she would like to pray to the cauldron before retiring. Mm-hmm. So he sort of plays this, like, oh, hurry up, like, I want to have sex sort of routine. But before she goes in to pray to the cauldron, she tells Jurian quietly to go get the human girl off the rack, and she's also going to take her with her. But I'm like, she saw multiple humans. What about the rest of them?
I think the other ones were dead already.
Oh, were they?
I think she was the only one still alive that was, like, on the rack. So she was like, gotta save her.
Okay, I'll buy that. So Jurian tells her she has 5 minutes, and he's gonna meet her on the eastern edge of the camp with the girl. Mm-hmm. And, like, he also knows that Azriel is there, too.
Maybe that's how he knew who she was, because, like, I guess he's fought with them before. Like,
but
maybe
Azriel is a shadow. How could he even see him or sense his presence without magic?
I don't know. Maybe he has magic.
I don't like this.
I assume he's still human, but the cauldron did make him. So did it not make him Fae?
No, he's still human. I think.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Hybern used a spell to bring him back. I feel like he would be very not well-adjusted if he was Fae.
Well, he's not super well-adjusted, like, anyway.
No. But, like, also remember, too, that, like, he was having that meeting with Grayson and Co before. They would not have deigned to meet with him if he was Fae.
I know, but he's also, like, over 500 years old and was, like, kept in a ring for that time. So it's, like, it's weird that they met with him anyway, because, like, he shouldn't really be alive.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's all weird.
Yeah. Anyway. He essentially tells Azriel, and he says, hey, Shadow Singer, make sure you have a dagger on you in case you're caught, because Hybern, like, you don't want to be caught by Hybern, essentially. So essentially he's saying, if you guys are caught by Hybern, kill yourselves, because otherwise he will make you wish you were dead.
I thought that was to Feyre. Not that it really matters. Like, I think it's maybe to both of them.
Yeah, I think he addressed both of them, but he said Shadow Singer or Azriel. He just insinuated that he knew Azriel was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he goes off, presumably to get this young girl. They go in to, quote-unquote, pray to the cauldron, / find Elaine, because Ianthe's allowed to come and go from Hybern's tent, willy-nilly, which is good for her, man. Like...
Yeah.
She really slept her way to the top there.
Do you think she's sleeping with the King of Hybern?
I think she did. If he wanted to.
Yeah.
I think she probably made it abundantly clear
that she was available.
Whether he took her up on it or not. I mean, that's who's to say.
Yeah. That's what I kind of wonder. Like, I know she would sleep with anybody if it would get power, but, like, I just wonder if he actually did.
I don't know. Anyway, so they find Elaine. She's behind a curtain, and she's in these, like, magic handcuffs. But Azriel's magic can't break them. And Feyre's magic is depleted, so she also can't. So the only other option, because the handcuffs are around her wrists and her ankles, the only other option is for Azriel to carry Elaine. So they leave, I guess, the back. It's a tent, so I feel like you could get through any little flap.
Yeah.
Like, you know. So
just cut a hole in it and walk out.
Yeah. So they start heading towards that cliff that Jurian talked about. And Azriel has them, like, cloaked in shadows to try and, like, make it so no one can see them.
Mm-hmm.
But Hybern has hounds, and Hybern's hounds, like, smell them, like, catch a whiff, and they howl. So they figure out what has happened. So then they start running. They're like, shit, we're caught. Let's go. So the issue is that there are wards all around the camp, so they have to be able to get past the wards in order to winnow away.
Yeah.
So they start running. They're, like, running through, an organized camp, so there are weapons around. There are other tents. Feyre manages to grab a bow and arrow from a stand of weapons, and she starts shooting behind her, and I just, like, I see Katniss with all those mutts. Like, that's the image I'm picturing.
Yeah.
But, like, I wonder if she still looks like Ianthe at this point.
Yeah, I would assume so. I feel like it would take effort. Although it's that thing where we don't know if it takes effort to keep it in place or if it takes effort to, like, change yourself and then effort to change back. But
yeah.
So depending on which one it is, we don't know if she still does. But, like, she's super good with a bow anyway.
She is, yes. So she is, like, shooting these, like, monstrous hounds that are running towards them. So she shoots one, but, like, then 3 more start chasing, and it's like, all of a sudden, ash arrows start firing at them. But, like, Azriel has his siphon shield protecting them. So, like, Azriel is cloaking them, he's shielding them, he winnowed them. Like, he is doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
Yes. All of it, maybe.
All of it. So they're nearing the cliff, and the human girl was waiting where Jurian said she would be, all by herself. But all of a sudden, the king appears behind them, and he's, like, slowly approaching. Like, he's just walking at a normal pace, because he thinks they have nowhere to go. So Feyre orders Az to get Elaine out. So, like, she's like, that's an order. She uses her high lady, like, I'm the boss. You have to do what I say. Me.
And she says it like that.
She says it exactly like that. So she's like, get Elaine out. And then Feyre is shot with an ash arrow through the shoulder. And she falls down.
Which is definitely makes it so much easier for what has to happen next.
Yes. So she still has the bow and arrow. Another, like, hound starts coming for her, and she kills another one with the bow and arrow. And the king is, like, slowly walking towards her. Like, he's not in any rush. He knows she got nowhere to go. And then the other 2 hounds are on her, and they, like, take her bow and arrows from her, and they then fling her dagger away, because she was going to use the dagger to stab them, and they're like, no, you don't, and they fling that away, because they're very intelligent, and they're about to attack her, when she hears a roar.
Yay.
And it's Tamlin. So, Jurian has already told us that after the High Lord meeting, Tamlin immediately went back to Hybern and, like, essentially reported everything that happened in the High Lord meeting. So everybody was convinced Tamlin was a traitor. So he, like, tears into the hounds with his
claws,
teeth and claws.
Yeah.
And,
like the big bad wolf.
Yeah, he's just being very beastie. And then Azriel comes back and grabs her, and she, like, rips the arrow out of her shoulder because she knows that it's an ash arrow, so in order for her to use any magic, she can't have the ash arrow in her body. And conveniently enough, Azriel tells her that in order to get past the wards, they need to get airborne. They need to get off the cliff.
Of course.
So she needs to fly to escape. So all the training, all the flying that she's done, it's coming in handy right now.
It all comes down to this moment.
It does all come down to this. 6 more hounds are running, and, like, Tamlin is, like, getting overwhelmed. So, Feyre's like, oh my god, this is my chance. Azriel runs first, and Elaine is, like, coherent, and, like, this is, like, the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. Elaine essentially yells at the human girl, like, if you want to live, grab this guy right now. And is, like, yelling it at this poor, tortured child person.
Yeah.
And it's literally the most emotion I've ever seen from Elaine in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And a hound, like, escapes from Tamlin's, like, little cluster and tackles Azriel and, like, shreds his wings a little bit. And Elaine actually, like, kicks it in the face to get it off of him. And again, I've never seen her more animated in my life.
I know, but I feel like that's the, like, theme of this week. Like, she really does turn it around this week.
Yeah, but it just bothers me, because then after this, she also just reverts back, and it bothers. Like, I haven't seen any growth from her at all.
How do you mean she reverts? Do you mean, like, in other books?
In future books. In future books, she sort of reverts back into, like, this demure, like, version of herself.
I don't think she does in the, like, Silver Flames book. I think we just don't get any of her in it other than, like, a few scenes. I can't really remember the novella, but, like, in the Silver Flames book, she, like, has a bit of bite to her more than I expected.
Maybe. I don't know. It's been a while since I've read it, so I haven't.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Azriel, badass that he is, has, like, shredded wings and injuries. So he staunches the flow of blood with his own magic and is, like, flapping off of a cliff with 2 people. And he's yelling at Feyre to run, to push up, to move faster. And there's a hound chasing her and it's catching up with her. And, like, she's trying to use her magic to create an updraft. And, like, she's 3 steps from the edge, and she feels this warm wind lift up under her wings, and she says it's scented with lilac, so it's like a spring wind. So obviously Tamlin pushed his magic at her to help her lift and fly. And she actually manages to fly and stay airborne next to Azriel. And, like, Hybern is shooting arrows at them, but, like, Azriel still has the shield. So, like, he's flying, he's staunching his blood, has this shield, like, he's got
2 women.
2 people!
Yeah.
Anyway, so they are struggling, so they're at the wards now, because the wards extended out past the cliff, so they're at the wards and they can't get through. So Feyre shoots some of Hellion's light magic to make a hole to get them out.
Yeah.
And they get out, and she turns around and, like, looks at the cliff, and, like, Hybern is like, ah, because they made it through. And she looks, and Tamlin starts, like, galloping for the cliff edge, and takes a running leap, and manages to jump farther than anything should be able to jump, and, like, makes it through that little hole she just broke through. Mm-hmm. And he makes it through the hole, and then he just winnows away in midair.
Yeah.
And then Feyre and Azriel also winnow back. And that's our daring camp rescue.
Yeah, it's a large one.
It was, and it was very action-packed. It was very, like, on the edge of your seat, especially after that sort of, Jurian's like, oh, better make sure you have your dagger on you, because if Hybern catches you, you'll wish you were dead. It sort of, I was like, oh my god, someone's gonna get caught.
Yeah.
But no one did.
Well, and especially since Feyre was like, get the girl.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my god, you can't add more to this.
Yes. But she did. And they all made it back.
Yeah.
So they get back to camp, and they ask the human, like, what her name is. And it's Briar, which is nice. And, like, I will say, when they were having this conversation, I just found that Briar was extremely well adjusted to everything that had been happening so far. Like, they were just like, oh, hi, Briar. And she was like, hi, like, I'm okay. It's like, you were just tortured on a rack for God knows how long. You were just, like, in a huge daring rescue, and you're still surrounded by Fae that just tortured you, and you're not scared or anything like that. So, I just found her extremely well adjusted.
Maybe she's just in shock.
That could be.
Who knows?
So Rhys and everyone sort of, I don't know if they sense that she's back or if they intercept her or whatever, but they intercept, like, them. So Nesta hears that she's back and runs towards the group. And Feyre thinks that she's going for Elaine, but to her surprise, she tackles Feyre in a huge hug. And it was just a really heartwarming moment.
Yeah.
And then Elaine comes over to their little twosome, and then the hugs them too. So then they're all in a little threesome, like the three sisters. And it's one of my most heartwarming moments. Like, I just think it's real cute.
Yeah.
It's I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's good for their relationships too.
Yeah. So Hellion comes to Feyre's tent. Like, the three sisters don't let go of each other. They all go to Feyre's tent. And Hellion comes because he's also a curse breaker. He comes and he can free Elaine from the cuffs. So he does. And the three sisters lay down on the rug on the floor, and they just cuddle together, and then they fall asleep. So Feyre gets up the next morning, leaves her sisters there, and apparently she's, like, really sore from the day, but she heads to Amren's tent. She's like, I'm going to help her with the book today. Because it was just yesterday that Feyre had given Amren the correct pages to use in the book. So she's like, maybe I can go help.
Yeah.
But Amren is still not taking visitors. Her and Varian are still there.
Yes.
Together. Bound chicka wow. So she just, like, takes a detour, I guess. Callius's army has arrived. And apparently Callius's army is a bit different from everyone else's because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure everyone else's army consists mostly of high fae. So they're all, like, pretty humanoid looking, apart from, like, being beautiful, big, brawny with the ears. And then, like, obviously Rhys has his Illyrian forces, but for the most part, everyone is high fae. Callius, who is the High Lord of Winter, actually has brought all manner of fae. So, like, there's all different types of fae there to fight. And the cutest thing, he brought little Arctic foxes, and they're the little messengers, and they'll go between everybody and deliver messages. It's so cute.
It is so cute. It kind of reminds me of Crescent City.
Yeah, Crescent City has the little cute otters.
Yeah. I love
I'd
it.
rather have the fox.
I like both. I will take both, and I will snuggle them.
Yes, I would obviously take both. But if someone was like, hey, I'm sending you a messenger, what do you want? An Arctic fox or an otter? I think I'd go Arctic fox. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It also depends, like, some foxes can be a bit vicious.
Well, obviously it would have to be a trained fox to be nice to me.
Yeah, but then you probably wouldn't be able to hug it.
They're also, like, they're riding polar bears because they're the winter court, so what else would they ride? Horses don't exist in the winter. That's foolish. So obviously they're riding polar bears. They're also not called polar bears. I'm just making the assumption, because they're Snow White bears.
Yeah.
So she sees, like, she's walking away from Amren's tent and sees Moore talking to Vivienne, who is the High Lord of Winter, Callius's wife, and Vivienne's sister. And also Briar the human. So Moore has given custody of Briar to the Winter Court because I guess Moore was worried that exposing her to Illyrians after her trauma wouldn't be for the best. And like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't really understand this thought process because it's not like the Night Court has only Illyrians.
No.
And like, do I think integrating Briar into an Illyrian army is wise? Obviously not.
Yeah.
But like, I also think like giving her to a court like the Winter Court where they have all manner of fae, like one of them could frighten her just as well as an Illyrian could.
Yeah. I think that it just goes to show how little control they actually have over the Illyrians and like how their own people they are. 'Cause like, I think, did we get last book that like they still clip the female Illyrian's wings and like Rhys wanted it stopped, but then when he was under the mountain for 50 years, they did whatever they wanted. So I think it just goes to show like how little control they have over the Illyrians, that she's like, I'm afraid that they would just kill her.
Yeah, I guess.
Which is just so bad. Like, why are we still letting the Illyrians be like this?
Yeah. I know. But like, I guess the thing too is like, how do you change a cultural norm of a people without them freaking out that you're trying to take away their identity? You know what I mean?
I do, yeah. Yeah. There's no easy way to do it, I guess, is the thing. Which is why it hasn't been done.
Yeah. Anyway, so I guess Feyre and Moore chat then. Like, the last time they really had a chance to talk, they had a big fight. Moore was pissed and thought that Feyre didn't trust her, and, I mean, she was right to be angry.
Yeah.
But then Feyre said some things about her personal life that were not really warranted, had nothing to do with the argument at all.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So they haven't been able to mend any of the fences.
Yeah.
So, I guess they get things over with first. Like, Feyre asks how Azriel is. He was injured, and Moore says that he'll be fine, but he won't be able to fly in time for the battle.
Which is crazy. I'm sure he's fine with that.
Yeah, no. He's one of, like, the best fighters they have, so having him not be combat ready is problematic.
Yes.
Moore then says that she wants to make things right after their fight and apologizes, and then Feyre apologizes, and it just opens this big not a big can of worms or anything like that. It's not bad, but it opens this big dialogue from Moore saying, like, I want to talk to you about everything because Feyre said, like, Az loves you and you've been ignoring that and you've been turning away from it, and like, you love him, but like, why have you been turning away from this? Like, you're creating this rift, and like, you know, essentially telling her that she's being untrustworthy by letting this infatuation from Azriel continue. And it opens this dialogue, and she essentially admits that she doesn't love Az, not in that way, not in a romantic way, and that she can't love him because she prefers females. So she admits then that she can take physical pleasure, so like, she's attracted to both males and females, but if she's talking a relationship, she wants a female.
Yeah.
So essentially, like, would you call, like, I guess, bisexual?
Yes. I'd say.
I feel like that's, I mean, if we had to label it.
Well, yeah, bisexuality is obviously like a spectrum of here to there. I'm guessing, like, she's bisexual leaning towards women. But Yeah. I have so many thoughts.
Well, let's hear them, because I'm dying to know.
So, like, in the first thought is I'm just so mad that Feyre brought this up at all. It's none of her business.
Yes.
Rhys even told her not to bring this up.
Yep.
And that she should keep her head out of it. And, like, I don't know why she does, other than, I guess, the reader needed to get this in the book.
Yeah.
I don't think Moore should have apologized. She had every right to be pissed at Feyre. I get that she was sad that they were in a fight when she left, so that she was kind of like apologizing for the whole situation.
Yeah.
But I don't think she had to. I think my biggest, like, so I obviously read it this week, and I still kind of stand by what I said last week, because in her whole her whole explanation to Feyre, she says that Azriel came he came to her after she had, like, been left to die on the Night Court's border, and she knew he was about to say that that he loved her, so she, like, left because she couldn't deal with it, which is 100% fair. She had dealt with some trauma. Like, that has nothing to do with him, really. But he never, after that, says that he loves her. Like, he's never told her. Sure, it's obvious, but, like...
Yeah, he's never made the declaration to her face.
Yeah. So how is she supposed to be like, hey, please stop all of this? Like, I don't really think that she's, like, because even in the end of this, she's like, do you think I'm terrible for leading him on? But I don't really think she's leading him on. Like, she's never slept with him. She loves him as a person and as family, but she's never slept with him, and she's never actually, like, tried a relationship. Also, Feyre being like, I know you love him and he loves you. Like, why are you not doing this? Isn't she allowed to find a mate? Like, Feyre found a mate. Isn't Moore allowed to wait until she finds, like, a mate or the perfect person for her? It's very... But, like,
do you not remember how rare mates are?
I can't get into that. Because I will murder someone. Not actually, but yeah. Ugh. Yeah. But that's pretty much, like, that's how I feel about it. I don't think she's to blame for this.
No, and I think part of so, like, obviously we haven't read a Moore story yet, so, like, maybe it'll become a little bit more apparent, but there's a little bit of controversy about this decision, because a lot of people were saying that initially Moore and Azriel were supposed to be mates, but Sarah J got a decent amount of criticism for not being inclusive and not having more diverse characters, so she switched it up to make this a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't think anyone's ever going to know for sure.
No. Unless you're, like, her husband.
Well, yeah. her, like, I guess maybe her, like, friend's family editor, anything like that. But, like...
So you know what we have to do?
Become her friend's family editor or something like that?
Yes, become her besties, and then, like, in 10 years be like, tell us the truth.
Yeah.
But we have to wait that long.
The other thing, part of it, too, is if she took this criticism, took it to heart, and made a main character LGBTQ+, are we then discounting that character's sexuality because she made a change? Because she was told she should have more? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, she took the criticism, maybe, we obviously have no idea, if she did take the criticism and change a character's sexuality to make it more inclusive, isn't that what we're trying to get authors to do?
Yes.
So, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad thing.
It just feels like people are mad that she did it, but it's also like, isn't this kind of what we wanted?
Well, why else would you complain about it? Like, you're complaining about it, and then she's like, okay, thanks for letting me know. And then she does something about it, and you're like, well, you only did that because we complained about it.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And it's like, yes, like, I sort of agree in that we want to get to a point in society where you don't have to complain about something to make shit happen.
Of course.
It should just happen without criticism. Like,
yes.
Authors should just do that. Yeah. But now, and we've spoken about this before a little bit cryptically, because we haven't been to this point yet. So there's also criticism then that Sarah J. Maas is potentially going to write a story with Moore as the main character, and if she does any sex scenes, she's going to write, presumably, girl-on-girl sex scenes, her being a white cis woman, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Like, is she going to do something that is either unrealistic, problematic, something that is going to offend the community? And should she maybe, like, you know, I think there's a general consensus that, you know, if you are somebody who has not experienced that form of, like, you know, if you are a cis straight person and you are trying to write, you know, LGBTQ sex scenes, maybe consult somebody from the community. But, like, at the same time, all sex in books is not realistic.
No. Obviously.
You know what I mean? Like, a woman is not going to magically come in 10 seconds from penetration alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is portrayed all the time. And then they come together, the man and woman, they come at the same time. Like, she tumbles off a cliff and he tumbles right after her. Like, it's, you know what I mean? It's a very common trope, like a woman coming, like, I literally read a book where a woman came, like, 30 times in a weekend. Like, it's not realistic. So, like, I just feel like, are we holding this sort of sex to a higher standard than we are? Like, you read a regular sex scene, you're not like, well, we're like, oh my god, that's not realistic. But, like, a normal person is like, you know it's not realistic, but you enjoy it anyway. So, like, should we not do the same thing with an LGBTQ one? Like, yeah, just read it for what it is, enjoy it, understand that it might not be realistic, but none of it is. Yes.
I think this is something that we're all getting ahead of ourselves on. And I know I've talked about it before, and, like, I've said stuff about it before. But, like, I do feel like we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Like, the next book that we're getting is Crescent City 3. And then after that, presumably we'll get another ACOWAR book. But my assumption is that it's going to be Elaine's book, I would think. Because the three sisters, that's just what I'm thinking. Obviously, I have no idea. Yeah. But then, like, is there going to be a Crescent City 4 after that? Like, it could realistically be 7 or 8 years before we before we have to worry about this. So I do kind of think, like, like, us as a fandom are worrying about stuff before we really need to. I do get it, though. Like, obviously, representation is important, and correct representation is super important. But it's hard. And I feel like this is how we end every conversation we talk about representation. We're like, it's so hard. Because, like, you obviously don't want... If she did write these books thinking that Az and Moore were going to end up together, then it's shitty that she then had to change Moore's character to be like, I've been hiding this from everybody, but I'm going to tell this new person that I just met a little while ago, even though I never told any of my family before. It's weird, for sure. I did find that part a bit weird the first time I read it. I was like, aren't you close with any of the other people? But, like, maybe she's not really, because, like, it's Cass and Az. Obviously, she doesn't want to tell them. And then Amryn, I don't really think Amryn has the, like, ability to be a very great friend, because she's she's not just high fae, she's still more like her old self.
Yeah.
So maybe she didn't have, but then like, what about Vivian, her Wintercourt friend, but they hadn't seen each other in a really long time. Anyway, I don't know. It's interesting that she's like, I'm going to tell you and nobody else ever.
Yeah. Yeah. But I guess too, like, I feel like there's probably some freedom in that simply because Feyre is the newest one in, so she has less preconceived notions and like there is less history there.
Yeah.
So there is, less of a chance of judgment because she hasn't been around for 500 years.
Yes.
Like everybody else has, so they think they know her inside and out and know every aspect of her.
Yeah,
Feyre doesn't.
That is a good point. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to this, obviously, but I think all in all it's good that going forward there is representation in Sarah J. Maas's books.
But yeah, I guess after that whole conversation, we're both still unsure of where we fall on this decision. I guess really the only thing we can do is assume and hope, because SJM is such an awesome author anyway, we're going to hope and assume she's going to do this the right way. She's going to treat it the right way. And I am going to take it as intentional.
Yeah.
I'm going to say she made this choice intentionally.
Yes. The only other thing that I care about this scene, is that I think that we don't know anything about Azriel. Like, we've never had his point of view until there is one chapter in the newest book. We get his point of view, and it kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, that chapter. But, like,
yes.
We don't know anything really. Like, we have Feyre, and then in another book we have another character. We don't really get a deep, like, Feyre has a good relationship with him. It gets a bit better in this book. They have a bit of, like, the flying time together, but we don't really know anything about Az and who he is as a person. So I just think there's so much more there that we don't know, and there's so much more that we don't know, that, like, I think everybody being, like, not everybody, but I think judging more too harshly for this whole situation, I personally don't think it's her fault.
No, 100%.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my spiel.
Yeah. So we're going to actually talk about the scene now.
Yeah.
Because we haven't actually said what happens in it.
That's fair.
So, Moore actually gives Feyre her history now. She says that she hasn't been able to tell anyone this secret because, I guess, growing up and being a young person and eventually like a young adult in the Hume City, it's not acceptable there because it's all about breeding and passing on your bloodline. So, even if say she told her family and said, hey, I'm actually into girls, I can't marry Eris, they would have said, sucks to be you, you're still marrying Eris.
Yeah. 100%.
They would have, like, tied her down for him instead. So, like, she knew that would not have swayed her parents, that she preferred females. So she did something that they deemed worse, which is sullying herself, getting rid of her virginity, which is prized. We love when that happens.
Yeah.
She also mentions how she specifically chose Cassian because she saw how Azriel felt about her and didn't think it'd be fair. Which I actually have to say is good for her. Like,
yeah.
She has seen how he has felt for ages and ages, and she has purposefully not acted on any sort of physical feelings whatsoever because she knew that it would, it could be leading him on.
Yeah. Sorry, not to jump back, but do we ever meet Moore's mother? Is she in the second book? I I can't remember.
I think she is in terms of, like, she's around and she gives, like, terse looks and disapproving looks.
Okay.
But I don't think we've ever heard her speak, which tracks, because it's Moore's family and the women are
not allowed.
They're just there for breeding purposes.
Yeah.
So.
No, that makes sense. I couldn't remember.
Yeah. So to further, like, when she keeps telling her story. So after she slept with Cassian and told her family that she was sullied and that whole thing happened and Eris, like, kicked her to the curb, Azriel is actually the one that found her, and the note was nailed to her body.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts confessing his feelings when she has a note nailed to her body. I think that's poor timing, like you said, on his part.
Yeah. Real poor timing, really.
Real poor timing. But she panics and walks away. How do you walk away when you have a note nailed to your body?
But, like, that's how shitty this situation is. She's like, I can't deal with this right now. I'm just gonna, I'd rather just stay here. Could you send someone else? God.
Anyway, apparently after that, she was too embarrassed with how panicked she was at his display of emotion. So she could never explain to him after that why she can't reciprocate his feelings. So, like, he started to confess, she was like, hard no, walked away, and since then she's been too embarrassed to go back and say, so about what you were saying earlier. At this point, it would be like, so about what you were saying 500 years ago.
Yeah, it'd be a bit awkward.
Yeah.
But I also am like, she doesn't really owe him or anyone an explanation. Like, I don't know. If she was interested in him, they'd be together.
I agree with you, but, like, her whole thing and Azriel's whole thing is that he assumes she's not with him because he's not worthy.
Yeah.
So, like, she has become this sort of unattainable, like, I love her, but she can never reciprocate it because I'm terrible. Like, yeah. I almost wish she could put him out of his misery that way and be like, it has nothing to do with you. I just like girls.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then he can sort of start to, like, heal from his own traumas.
But, like,
and move on.
That's what I'm saying. We don't really know anything about him because, like, in the next book, he's put his attachment on someone else who's also not available. And you're like, dude, why are you doing this to yourself?
Yeah, no, you have a point. But again, like, hopefully we'll get a little bit more about, like, to be honest, for all we know, maybe he doesn't even have a thing for her. Like, maybe he's not in love with her romantically. Maybe he's just attached to her as a sister or as a friend.
Yeah.
We don't know. We're just accepting what we've been told.
From Feyre's point of view and from, because what we're seeing. Yeah.
Everyone's so good at seeing looks in eyes.
Yeah.
So,
which is like one of the funny things about the more recent book is in somebody else's point of view, and you see some of the characters from a different person's point of view, and you're like, holy shit! Like, where are they as a person? If you go from, like, Feyre's point of view to somebody else's, and they seem like a completely different person. It's just interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so she tells Feyre that essentially she mostly sleeps with other males to stop people from looking too close. Because if she doesn't take a male lover, then it's sort of a, well, hey, what's going on?
Yeah. Which is unfortunate, obviously.
Yeah. And she sort of admits that she is shamed for a lot of things, right? Like, her family shames her for a lot of things. The whole thing with Cassian, like, just being in league with Rhys, is, she's shamed for it.
Yeah.
She's afraid to tell people this because she doesn't want them to shame her for something that is so close and such a close part of her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she says that she took her first female lover during the war, and it was a human queen, but the decision was made to end their relationship because the queen needed to continue her line.
Mm-hmm.
So more left. And by the time... Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's also one of your least liked tropes of somebody who is immortal and somebody who is human.
Yeah, I hate it. I hate it so much. So by the time she realized that she wanted any time she could get with this queen, the wall was up. And by the time Moore managed to get around the wall, the queen was married and had a baby and another one on the way. And her name was Andromache or Andromatch. I'm not 100% sure how to say it.
I wouldn't even try, to be honest.
So she also then says, like, she didn't really want another relationship for a while. But she woke up one day and wanted to find someone. And she says she's had relationships with females in the past, but has always kept them a secret, so the relationships don't last very long. Because I guess the other females don't want to be a secret.
Yeah, which is fair.
Yeah, very fair. She also just says that if she were to ever try a relationship with Azriel, because Feyre was sort of like, and I didn't really appreciate this comment, Feyre was sort of like, how do you know you're not in love with Azriel unless you try? Like, and I'm like, come on, man, that's stupid.
Yeah. She just said she preferred women, so I don't think she's gonna just figure out it clicks with him.
Yeah. But she says that, like, he would, if she did admit to them, like, if she did sort of say, hey, want to try, he would see it as, like, a happy ending, and she doesn't want to hurt him that way. Yeah. Because, like, if she tried it, and he was like, yes, happy ending, and she was like, oh, I don't actually like this, like, it would really break his heart. She's also afraid to tell him at this point that they will never be an item, because she's worried it'll, like, upset the group dynamic and upset their friendship, and she thinks things are fine the way they are. And they are fine. They're just not great. Yeah. And Feyre sort of says, like, so her exact words, Moore's exact words were, things are good enough as the way they are. Mm-hmm. So Feyre tells her that she doesn't think she should settle for good enough. And essentially, when you're ready to tell people, I'll stand by you. Yeah. And also said, like, oh, I'm excited to set you up with people now. And it's like, Feyre, just stay the fuck out of it.
Yeah. She just fucking can't. She can't stay out of it. It's... Yeah. It's
something. Yeah. So, after that, like, their relationship has been repaired. They then, everybody has a meeting with all the High Lords that are there. So, Hybern's army is on the move, and they're saying they're not really sure what his goal is. Like, where is he headed? Mm-hmm. So, they look at a map, and they finally piece together that, like, so we've already discussed in the past week or two that there have been a couple of little skirmishes here and there, and they've sort of been like, what's Hybern doing? Why is he doing all these little tiny fights? Mm-hmm. And they've sort of figured it out that Hybern has essentially been herding them into a specific area. That means now that the wall is down, in order to get to Hybern, they're gonna have to cross a big-ass river. Yeah. And essentially, they don't have, like, if they, obviously not everybody can winnow, so in order for them to get across the bridge, in order for them to get across the river, they would either have to build a bunch of bridges and boats, which would take weeks, even with magic, which is weird. Yeah. Other than that, they would have to winnow everybody across. Not everybody can winnow. So that means that the magic of those that can would be depleted by the time they cross the river.
Yeah.
It also means that Hybern will be, like, days ahead of them, and seems like they're sort of going to march into the human lands without resistance, and they're just going to slaughter everybody they can. And they especially have figured out that Hybern is doing this to spite Feyre, Nesta, and Elaine. Because Feyre came in, stole Elaine back, essentially spit on Hybern, and now he wants to get even, knowing that they love humans.
Yeah.
So they all know that if they manage to get their army across the river and into position, everybody's going to be exhausted, and it's also just going to be a slaughter because no one's going to have their magic back. Mm-hmm. But Rhys essentially says to the High Lords that they need to do it anyway because they need to save people. And I think there was like a comment on, well, it's not really people, it's just humans, right?
Yeah.
And Rhys has to sort of be like, as Fae, are we going to be the type of people that stand in defense of the helpless, of those people that can't help themselves, or are we not those people?
Yeah.
And so they all agree that, yeah, okay, we're not going to be dickheads.
Fine, I guess.
Yeah, fine. We'll go save the useless humans.
Yeah.
So they agree they're going to leave in a few hours. Hellion makes the observation that humans are still going to die first because they're still going to take them time to catch up to Hybern. Mm-hmm. So Feyre suggests that anybody that can winnow should go to the human lands and start winnowing families out to save them. Right. So obviously they can't put them in Spring Court. They can't put them in Autumn Court. So Tarquin agrees to take them in the Summer Court and offers up Cressida to take care of him, take care of everybody. Which I actually really appreciate. I think Cressida, even though we haven't gotten we haven't gotten to see her as a character, I think her actions have really exponentially grown.
Yeah.
Since the last book. Because in Mist and Fury, she was there, she was sort of like a flighty little princess, like flirting with Rhys, like hanging off of his every word, and like sort of being like that. And now she's one of the first ones. Remember, she volunteered with Vivienne to like join the war effort. She's like agreeing to be responsible for this like refugee camp, I'm calling it. Mm-hmm. Like, she is really stepping into an awesome role. And I'm really proud of her.
Part of it, I think, is, like, last book, Feyre was just so jealous of her that she couldn't actually see her as a real person.
Yeah.
And now that she's finally like, oh, the man is mine.
Yeah.
She can get over that and appreciate her as a person.
All of a sudden then Amren comes in. She has found a way to stop the Cauldron and the entire army from the book, but it requires the 4 of them that are made. So Amren, Feyre, Nesta, and Elaine. All 4 of them need to touch the Cauldron together, and they're not going to be nullifying the Cauldron, but the person controlling it and his entire army. Mm-hmm. Which, way to go.
Yeah, it's convenient. Like, a very thank you, Surreal, I guess.
Yeah. So, they have to wait, obviously, until the fighting is at its most chaotic to gain access to the Cauldron, because obviously Hybern's going to be watching it like a hawk. Mm-hmm. And they also knew he would be exhausted. They knew that as a group they would all be exhausted from winnowing to the battlefield, and they knew they were going to have disadvantaged ground because Hybern would already be there and obviously pick the best spot, but they're still going to go anyways. So that night, any Fae that could winnow spent all night traveling to human villages and winnowing them to the Summer Court Forest. Cressida is waiting there with food, clothes, and shelter. Some humans went willingly, but others put up a fight since obviously they're afraid of Fae. Feyre and Rhys went together, which I thought was silly. Like,
Yeah.
I know they probably want to spend time together since it's, like, could be their last night together. But, I still think they would have been better off going separately, because they have the same powers.
To save more people, yeah.
Yeah. So, Rhys would, like, force them to go anyway. If they were unwilling, he just would, like, hold on to them anyway and just go.
Mm-hmm.
That night, Rhys fell asleep, obviously, exhausted from winnowing, and Feyre couldn't bear it. Like, she couldn't bear the thought of him sacrificing himself to buy her time, which is what she knew he would do. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the inner circle would, too.
Yeah.
But she knew that Rhys had given enough of himself, so she decided that any chance of survival was better than none. So she decides that even though they have Bryaxis already to fight, she's going to go after the Ouroboros mirror in order to get the Bone Carver on their team.
Yeah.
So, no preamble. She goes right to the Court of Nightmares, finds the mirror. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
Like, it was actually, like, the easiest thing she's ever done in this whole book.
Yeah, exactly.
She doesn't have to find it anywhere. Like, she doesn't have to go asking for it. She just knows where it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she goes and stares at it, and at first she sees nothing. There's nothing in there. It's just her own reflection. But then she sees movement in the mirror behind her. And she describes it as a beast with scales and claws and fur. And it's terrifying. And it's like climbing down the wall and it's gonna pounce on her. And she turns around to like look at it because something's about to pounce on her. And she's got her dagger, but like there's nothing behind her. And when she turns back to the mirror, I know, it's wild. When she turns back around to the mirror again, it's the beast instead of her reflection. And she understands that the beast is her. It's what lurks beneath her skin.
Yeah.
So, shit happens.
Yeah.
So, it skips a whole bunch, and she brings it to the Bone Carver. So, she can summon the mirror at will now. So, like, she didn't even have to think about it. She just went to the Bone Carver, and he was like, "You got the mirror?" And she was like, "Yep." And, like, snapped her fingers, and it was in his cell.
Which is cool. If you want a mirror like that for some reason, I don't really know the point. Maybe it'll come up later, though. That's interesting.
Maybe. Actually, that's a good idea. So she sort of said she stared at it for so long, and it showed her so many things. And she tells the Bone Carver, like, I held up my end of the deal. You have the mirror, and now it's your turn. You agreed to fight. Mm-hmm. And this is where he's a little bit of an asshole, because he then says, it would be my pleasure. And he tells Feyre that he doesn't need the mirror at all. But she did. So essentially, he would have agreed to help anyway. Like, he would have agreed to help. He would have helped her anyway. But wanted her to just do something for him first.
Yeah, he wanted to make sure that she was worthy or something, I think he says. But, like, it turns out she did need this, like, for the end of the book, so.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing, too, is that, like, Amren had to, like, give up her humanity and, like, stuff herself, or her immortality and stuff herself into a Fey body. She just takes the Bone Carvers, like, okay, let's go, and then they leave.
Yeah, I don't really understand that, because she had asked Amren what she was going to do, and, like, is it just that the Bone Carver's like, I want to live here, so I do, and he can just leave at any time?
Maybe.
Interesting.
But yeah, so she just, like, says, okay, let's go, so she, like, leads him out of the cell. Next day, I don't understand how she's not exhausted, because she hasn't slept.
Yeah.
So the next day, they're marching to the battlefield. and they see that Hybern has indeed destroyed all the villages on the way, Feyre's manor, in her old manor house included. Feyre and Nesta change into Illyrian fighting leathers, and Nesta has a dagger to protect herself. But Elaine is too modest to wear pants that show her legs. So she can't wear the Illyrian fighting leathers. The poor dear. And it just, you're going into a war. No one cares if you're wearing pants.
I know, but she's never worn pants in her life. She always wears dresses.
Don't care. She's probably gonna die today.
Yeah.
Wear pants. Anyway, so they offer her instead some winter court clothing that is still pants, but it's got like a long tunic, so like covers up her butt.
Yeah.
And then they try and give her a dagger, but she's like, oh, I can't. She like doesn't actually say that, but she looks at it and with her like delicate sensibilities and is like horrified that they offer her a dagger. It's like, by all means, don't protect yourself at all.
Which is just so interesting with what happens. Like,
yeah. Anyway, Azriel sees all this and offers her his dagger, Truth Teller. And he says it is supposed to have magic so that it always strikes true. And she actually takes it.
Yeah.
Like, did she think that another type of dagger would hurt herself?
Maybe.
Ugh.
Well, realistically, she hasn't trained, so she is more likely to hurt herself than anyone else.
I guess.
Same with Nesta, but here we are, battle time.
Yeah. Rhys tells Feyre then that he has never seen Azriel let another person even touch that knife. And then Rhys gives everyone a nice inspiring speech about how grateful he is that everyone is in his life, and if he is to die today, he won't regret it at all. And it's very nice and moving, and I almost cried. Almost. So they get to the battlefield, they see Hybern's army. Apparently they are vastly outnumbered. But nonetheless, they all get into their formations. The Autumn Court still isn't there. So Amren sort of explains that the way war works for the Fae, is they will use magic first to try and take down each other's shields. Because obviously there's no point in physically battling when you've got a magic shield up to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
So the High Lords all start unleashing their power to break down Hybern's shields, except for Rhys, and he's waiting for the shields to be down before he lets his power loose, because his is exceptionally strong.
Yeah.
So it goes on like that for a while, and each side, like the sides, I sort of don't even understand what the point of the shields are, because each side breaks the other shields around the same time. So, like, why bother?
I don't know. It's war. You use arrows first.
Yeah, but I feel like it's silly. If it takes both the same amount of time, you're expending all this extra magic that you could be funneling into, like, a different endeavor. I just don't see the point.
I guess they didn't expect it to fall down at the same time.
No. Anyway, so the shields break, and automatically Feyre lets a glamour down and reveals the Bone Carver and Bryaxis. They're on the front lines. So her and Rhys are standing together, and she tells him that she retrieved the Ouroboros mirror last night, and she thinks about what she saw. She said she cried at it and raged at it and vomited and screamed, but then she studied it and saw every flaw, but she forgave it and grew to love it. So she loves herself despite everything she's done, and it's all because of Rhys.
Yay.
Because he loves her, so she loves herself. And that's why she didn't go crazy.
And that's what love really is.
Anyway. So Rhys then reveals the Weaver in the exact same way. They're both equally dramatic. And the Weaver, my favorite part is how dramatic the Weaver also is, because she's wearing Ianthe's blue jewel, like, headpiece. Mm-hmm. And I really love it.
I love it, too.
Suck it, Ianthe. So apparently Hellion offered to break the Weaver's containment spell so that she would fight for them today. And that's actually why he was in the Weaver Woods the day the Azriel died.
Yeah. But it's interesting, though, because, like, the Weaver is, after this battle, I guess, the Weaver's potentially free. I don't think that's a good thing. Yeah, so, like, the deal now, after this battle, if the Weaver were to live or whatever, she'd just be free.
Yeah, the same, like, with Bonecarver and the Bryaxis, and they're all, like, dead gods.
I know, but Bryaxis wanted to live in the library, which I know, but that's what it said. And the Bonecarver, like, I thought the Bonecarver was like, I just want to stay here, too. But, like, the Weaver, I feel like, is more outwardly
hostile.
Aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yes. Anyway, the three beings start fighting, and Rhys all of a sudden mists a huge chunk of army, which then cut, like, right from the middle. So that cuts the army in half. So that's when the Illyrians start fighting. They actually have really good strategy going on. Mm-hmm. Hybern, however, uses ash arrows tipped in Feybane to get past their siphon shields. But, like, they've all taken the antidote so that the Feybane won't, like, stop them from magic. But that does nothing for their shields, and also, if they get shot with an arrow, it's still gonna hurt.
Yeah, it'll still hurt their magic or whatever.
Yeah. Amren wants to start trying to find the cauldron immediately, but Rhys is like, not yet, it's not chaotic enough. But then all of a sudden they hear a sound of a horn. And then through, like, a rip in the world, I'm calling it, 3 armies appear. Autumn Court, Spring Court, and the humans from Grayson's Keep. So they've all appeared to help. Mm-hmm. Eris comes to tell them, like, Eris comes to them and tells them that Tamlin essentially came by, grabbed Baron by the neck, and, like, made him come. So, like, Baron was not gonna join.
Yeah, which is not good for Eris, for one, but also dumb.
Well, yeah, it's not great for Eris's alliance, because he said, I'll make sure we're there. You did not make sure they were there.
Nope.
Tamlin made sure they were there. So this is another piece of Tamlin's quote-unquote redemption arc. So he saved Feyre. Now he's, like, bringing troops to the battlefield, all in an effort to make him seem like not a terrible person. I know, you're swayed. I'm not.
I'm not swayed by this stuff specifically. I just think that he could heal as a person and be better.
Fine. Anyway, so the Eris's brothers, they're all fire-powered people. They all go to the enemy wagons that have, like, all the arrows and the Feybane in them, and they just burn the supplies to ash, which is, again, more great strategy. Like, this is wonderful strategy.
It's just kind of funny. I'm like, did nobody else have firepower and could do that? I feel like it, I don't know. I guess they're all very busy.
Yeah. Jurian is also leading the human army, so Rhys is like, oh, it's probably a good time to go, because Hybern is going to be like, what? Jurian, my closest ally, like my right-hand man, he was betraying me the whole time.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, you guys should probably go look for the cauldron now. I don't know how they've gotten this strategy, because they didn't know the Weaver was among them, but apparently she's gonna sniff out the cauldron for them. and they're just gonna follow her wake of destruction. I don't understand how she knows that plan.
I don't either. It's like kind of just like the Weaver just like gives them a look and is like, follow me. And they're like, how does the Weaver know? And we're just accepting it.
Yeah. All of a sudden Nesta like collapses in pain and she like calls out to Cassian like the loudest anybody has ever yelled for anything. And he's flying and fighting, but he hears her, and so he flies for her. Then the cauldron releases a shot of power, which we could probably have guessed, because Nesta feels things when, you know.
When the cauldron does things.
Yes, exactly. So, the cauldron releases a shot of power at the Illyrian army, and 1,000 soldiers are just gone. So yeah, Nesta's like on the ground, groaning in pain. But the cauldron shoots another bolt of power, and this time not in the air, but to the front lines where the Bone Carver is fighting, and the Bone Carver is also wiped away.
Which is sad.
Yeah. The Weaver / Striga, which is his twin, is hella pissed because that was her brother. So she's like raging, heading for the cauldron. But Nesta is still in so much pain from what the cauldron just did, and Elaine is like throwing up from the terror of being like among the battlefield. Feyre knows that like they can't go. Yeah. So Amren asks, like, can we do it just the two of us? And Amren's like, I mean, maybe. So they decide they're just going to go try.
Yeah. Well, like, they're so unprepared to help that it's just not worth it.
So they they start to go, and all of a sudden they see an armada of ships in the distance. And they think it's actually the rest of Hybern's army, and it's trapping them in. So it's putting Hybern's army on one side, them along the coast, and then all these ships at their back. So, like, they're vastly, vastly outnumbered. So Rhys tells Feyre to try and get to the cauldron, but if she can't, she needs to run. To live to fight another day. So obviously we have Rhys here doing what Rhys does best. Yeah. Which is, you know, wanting her to survive at all costs, and he's gonna, he hasn't done anything yet to sacrifice himself, but, you know.
Well, he's gonna stay there till the bloody end.
Exactly, yes. Rhys then orders Azriel to take a flank. I don't know what a flank is, but he's taking a flank.
A side of an army? Like, I just assumed it's like I don't know armies.
Yeah. Even though we've already established Azriel should not be flying or battling after his injury, and Rhys wasn't going to let him, but they're in sort of dire straits right now. Yeah. So Azriel's like, gone. This is a weird thing, is like, they hear a chorus of horns, and I don't know why, but Rhys and Cassian pull Feyre and Nesta into the sky, like they lift them up and like pull them to the sky, and all of a sudden they see thousands and thousands of winged soldiers and boats full of people, and it's Draken and Miriam! Yay! More people have showed up to help them. But I guess Draken and Miriam has heard through rumors what was happening and ended up coming anyway. And on their way, they met up with a human army. It turns out they've been on their island all along, but they had a really strong glamour up, so no one could find them, which is stupid.
Yeah, I think they even say that it was stupid.
Yeah. The human army was led by Queen Vassa, the one that Lucian was trying to find. So, like, again, they managed to find her because she was apparently held captive. So they found her, brought her to her land to raise an army, and then, like, I don't know, man. Seems
Yeah,
like they got a lot done.
Yeah, a lot has happened.
Yeah. So, I guess Drake and Miriam sort of say, oh, we met up with this human army. A human from your continent or somebody from your continent came to get Queen Vassa and amass an army, so we just joined on. And they're like, oh, it's Lucian, right? But it turns out it was not Lucian. It was the Prince of Merchants, who discovered that the human queens were traitors. So he went to amass an army and found Vassa, and they were already on their way back when Lucian found them and just met up with them. Mm-hmm. The Prince of Merchants, if you remember from book 1, is Feyre's dad.
Jazz hands.
So I guess he's been gone a really long time. They said he was gone on business, but he was actually trying to find an army to amass against Hybern, and he was heading his own 3 ships. Like, I guess he has 3 personal ships, and he named one after each of his daughters. So there's the Feyre, the Nesta, and the Elaine. And he is aboard the lead ship, the Nesta, coming right for him to help.
Yeah. So Feyre and Nesta are in the air, and they can see it, I guess. They have really good eyesight, I'm assuming, is what I'm like.
But I think it's actually very important for him to be riding the Nesta as opposed to Feyre. Because his and Nesta's relationship was the most damaged. Mm-hmm. And I think this is sort of his way of, is like sort of a peace offering as much as it can be.
Yeah, like, it kind of shows that he knows that he failed her.
Yeah.
So they're all pretty shocked that it's their father, because, like, I think when I read this, I really didn't see this coming. Like, I didn't think he had it in him after the first book, to be honest. So Rhys introduces Nesta and Feyre to Draken. And Rhys then asks about Vassa and her curse. And he's kind of like, is she even able to be here, kind of thing. But then Feyre can see her as a giant firebird with red, gold, and white like molten metal flying through the battle and attacking Hybern's men. And she kind of thinks that, like, they finally have a chance now with these extra armies. Like, with these armies, it's madness. They can definitely go for the cauldron, and they finally have a shot at actually winning.
Yeah.
Rhys tells Draken then that Jurian is there and he's fighting on their side, which Draken doesn't seem convinced by. And, like, Feyre kind of insists, I know you could have said this, but that she and Amren can go alone. So they decide that they're going to go after the cauldron now. And before they actually leave or anything, Nesta asks to be used as bait. And immediately Cassian just disagrees. But she kind of says the king is likely beside the cauldron. And she tells them all that the power of the cauldron goes both ways. She can kind of pretend that she is, like, powering herself up, kind of like she feels the cauldron power up, so the cauldron will recognize that she's powering up, and I guess Hybern will know about it.
Right.
So he'll come over to stop her.
Right.
So that's kind of her plan. She wants to be bait. Cassian is like, oh shit, that's actually a good idea. I'll stay here and guard you. And Rhys just immediately says no. Nesta says that Rhys isn't her High Lord, and which is like, I get what she's saying, but she says it so much that I'm just like, ugh, it kind of annoys me. I'm like, he kind of is. Like, if you want to live in the Night Court, like, where else are you gonna live? But anyway, Cassian, he agrees with her that it's the only shot they have, and they kind of argue back and forth, Cassian and Rhys. And Rhys kind of tries to, as the High Lord, tell Cassian that he can't do it, but Cassian is just like, you sacrificed yourself under the mountain for 50 years, like, the least I can do is repay that favor.
Right? Like, oh my god.
Yeah. And then he asks Nesta if she's ready, and they kind of just don't bother to wait for Rhys is okay. And Nesta says to tell their father thank you, and then they go. And, like, this moment, it's very clear that everybody thinks that they're both going to be killed now. Because obviously the king is going to be drawn to them, and they're both going to die. And everyone is aware of that, including them. So it's a lot. To that point, Feyre says to Rhys that Cassian might live, but he responds, no, he won't. Which is just so bleak. But, like, I get it, but it's so bleak. Then Rhys brings Elaine to the furthest part of the camp, which is interesting.
Why?
So, Cassian and Nesta are going to lure the king away.
Yes.
Elaine is brought to, like, the outskirts of the camp away from the fighting.
Yes.
How does she get where she gets later?
Maybe, that's a great question.
Yeah. Do we think she can winnow?
No, I think she probably wandered her way around because she's freaking clueless.
I don't think she wandered her way into the battle. I am going to refuse to believe that. And I don't think that they would have put her anywhere near where Nesta and Cassian went, because they're like, let's keep her safe and away. We can't put her near where they're bringing the king. I just... No,
you're right. I don't have a very high opinion of...
I know.
And I wonder if it's actually slightly problematic.
Like, you can't give her any benefit at all. No. You're like, no, she's an idiot.
Yeah.
That's fine. Eventually we'll get her point of view, and maybe it'll change. Maybe it won't. That's fine, too. You're allowed opinions.
Yeah.
So then Rhys kind of gets ready to go back to fighting, and Feyre and Amren have to, like, go off on their own, since obviously if Rhys went with them, they'd be easier to find, since I think we still have, like, Hybern still has that track on Rhys's power. So he's like, make sure you're sneaky and no one sees you guys. Or I think Amren might say that, but it's like, obviously.
Yeah.
But right? So they sneak over to basically, like, the path the Weaver has cleared for them. And Amren shatters some wards around, I guess it's kind of like a camp that the King of Hybern has there. Feyre and Amren are, like, almost to the cauldron. Feyre can kind of tell. And there are a lot of commanders, like, sitting in this camp. And they're just waiting for, like, the majority of the battle to be, like, done with the grunts. And then they'll go and have their turn once it's only the, like, really good people left. And they're, like, kind of talking about who they want to fight. And it's kind of gross.
Yeah.
They finally see the Weaver, and she, like, looks at them and smiles a bloody smile, and it's kind of implied, like, she was waiting for them to arrive, and then she attacks the commanders as a distraction for them. Feyre can feel power building, and first she thinks it's the cauldron, but then obviously, we just had this conversation, she realizes it's Nesta, and this is the distraction that Nesta's making. The king also feels it and walks by them, but doesn't see them because they're, like, hidden somehow. But on his way, he meets the Weaver, and he says how beautiful she is, and he calls her Ancient One, and she says that he may bow to her, and he walks right up to her and just snaps her neck.
Which blows my mind. Like, how?
Why didn't she do something? Why didn't she stop it? I think she, like, expected him to, like, I don't know. I think she, like, expected him to not kill her. Or maybe this was all part of her distraction. She was like, my brother's dead now. I don't want to live anymore.
Maybe.
I don't know. Feyre kind of thinks, like, she is a death god. Like, she could theoretically have lived through that. But then Hybern throws her down to 2 Naga who tear into her. So, like, there's no way she's coming back to that from that. I know, it's sad. I love all these monsters.
I know.
The king then looks towards where the power is building, towards Nesta, and he winnows away. So we assume he's going towards the distraction, which is, like, what we wanted. So Amren and Feyre get to the cauldron, and Feyre is, like, prepared to make Nesta and Cassian's sacrifice count. Like, she's ready to do everything she can to do what she needs to do.
Yeah.
So Amren, like, magics the book to her and tells Feyre to touch the cauldron. And obviously she does. And power rushes into her. And it's similar to last time. And she gets who she is. But she clings to the images that she saw in the Ouroboros. Because that's her true self. And, like, because she did that, I think is the only reason why she doesn't lose herself in this situation. Amren just watches her, and then she closes the book and, like, puts it behind her back. And we realize that she lied to Feyre. And Feyre realizes, like, she fell right into this trap of believing that Amren was gonna help them. I feel like Feyre overreacts a bit here, is what I'm gonna say.
But I feel like this was the point. It was a bit of a twist on purpose. Because
yeah,
it was like trying to be like, oh, Amren's betraying you, and then it goes psych.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I'll buy it.
Thank you.
Amren apologizes, but Feyre, like, can't let go of the cauldron even if she wanted to, and she tries to, like, use her magic to, like, help herself, but nothing's working. And she only gets, like, mentally closer to the cauldron while she's struggling. And then she's half in the present, holding the cauldron, and then half flying over the, like, battlefield with the cauldron, hunting for Nesta's power. So the cauldron's really fixated on Nesta because it stole from it. And it wants to go take that back. So it is currently hunting for Nesta, but Feyre is attached to it. Mentally. It's interesting.
Yes.
So Feyre can see over the battlefield, and she can tell that, like, they are losing badly. She can see Azriel's fighting, and his wings are on the ground, which is, like, the one thing he told her you shouldn't do, is drag your wings on the ground. So obviously, he is exhausted. He's not in the sky, and his wings are touching the ground.
Yeah.
She sees Rhys, who's fighting beautifully, and she sees him transform into his full black beast, which we've actually never seen that form of him. And it sounds kind of cool. She says it's, like, very nightmarish, and, like, the face on his throne in the Court of Nightmares is what his face looks like here. So it's kind of like, it's not just decoration of, like, Court of Nightmares, it's actually him.
Yeah.
And then Helion transforms into, like, a daytime equivalent of the of, like, the same beast, basically. And they start to fight together against a commander who is coming towards them. So I kind of like their relationship. I just like that he was brought up, and that you can see, like, the night court and the day court have, like, their beast forms are, like, yin and yang to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's cool.
I agree.
Feyre obviously wants to keep watching Rhys because she loves him, but the cauldron is obviously going to Nesta, and they get there, and they're just watching as, like, nothing in the air. Like, Feyre can just see from above, like, as a third-person narrator for this book.
I love it.
Yeah, like, it's necessary.
She's become third person omniscient.
Yeah, right? Oh, God. So, yeah. Feyre kind of realizes that Nesta has her power ready to kill the king as soon as he gets there. So, like, she isn't just faking this, like, pulling up her power from its well. She's actually going to use it to kill the king when he gets there. But he shows up, and he has their father in his arms with a sword to his throat. It's not great.
No.
So Feyre begs the Cauldron to help, but all the Cauldron wants, it's very one-track minded, if it even has a mind, is to take back its power from Nesta. The king kind of taunts them all a bit, and he tells the father, like, lots has changed since he's last been here. All 3 of his daughters are now Fae. But he doesn't, like, take the bait. He just says to Nesta that he's loved her since he first held her, and that he's so sorry for all of it. Which I think was really necessary. Like, Nesta really needs this.
Yeah.
Nesta just says please to the king, and he asks if she'll give back what she took, even if he has to carve it out of her. And their father says, don't touch her. And then the king just snaps his neck.
It's really unfortunate, because we're finally getting this moment that Nesta really needs, and
then he's dead.
And then he's dead.
It is very unfortunate. And it's also kind of, it was so abrupt. Like, when I was first reading it, I was like, wait, what? Like, why did he do that? Wasn't he using him as a human shield? Like, I don't understand why he just killed him.
Yeah, it's silly on Hybern's part.
Yeah. So Nesta doesn't really react. But her power kind of just flickers out, which I guess was the point, but, like, that is a big gamble. Like, what if she was the type of person to get really angry instead of just shutting down? But Cassian has his power, so he starts to send arrows at the king, and he shields Nesta, and then he, like, gets his sword out, and he fights Hybern just to, like, give everyone a bit more time to get done what they're trying to do. Like, it's so sad. It's, like, partly, I would assume he's hoping Nesta will run. Partly he's trying to give Amren and Feyre time, and Feyre's there. She can't even get back to the, like, physical cauldron to do anything, so she probably feels bad about it too. Well, I know she feels bad about it, but anyway, Nesta just kneels before their father and, like, closes his eyes and kisses his brow, and when she looks up, I guess Feyre and the cauldron see her eyes, and you can see on-cut power in her eyes as she gazes to the king. I don't know what on-cut power looks like.
I mean, me neither, but
yeah,
sure, we'll take it.
I'm assuming, like, maybe it's the whole silver flames thing. Maybe her eyes have turned silver flames again.
Maybe.
Cassian is screaming. He's on the ground. His wings are not in the right positions. They're snapped in a few places. There's a bone sticking out of his thigh.
Ew.
Which is just so gross. So bad. He's still trying to get up, though, but the king is just standing over him and breaking more of his bones as he's there. It's awful. And Nesta just says stop, and the king looks up, and Feyre kind of thinks that Nesta doesn't look human or fae, but purely animal, and she says she's going to kill the king. And Feyre, like, can barely stand to watch, but she's just stuck there. Nesta explodes and uses all of her power towards the king, but he winnows out of the way, which is so unfortunate.
I mean, but also, did we not think this is gonna happen?
100% assumed that would happen. But she does end up taking out, like, all of the trees that were behind him, and she takes out, like, hundreds of his soldiers on the battlefield. So, like, she has a significant amount of magic. The king just calls her magnificent and says that, like, she's on
That's
train.
such an asshole. That's such an asshole thing to say.
What?
Like, she's trying to kill you, and you're like, oh, you're magnificent. It's like, no, asshole, she's dangerous. Like, stop complimenting her.
It kind of makes me feel like if they lived, he would, like, take her as his bride, queen, but, like, not actually by no choice in the matter.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Obviously, she obviously wouldn't want to be with the person who killed her father, at the very least, and kills humans for fun. But, yeah, I kind of think that he would...
You're saying you wouldn't want to be with that sort of a person?
Yeah, it's so weird.
It's so weird.
Nesta's basically used up all of her power, though, which is unfortunate. Cassian tells her to go and tries to crawl towards her. And the king kind of...
It's the saddest thing!
It is!
I hate it so much!
But it's exactly like when she was put in the cauldron, when he couldn't do anything and was crawling towards her. And, like, the king even brings it up, and he's like, was it this one or the other one that was crawling towards you last time? And it's, like, so sad.
It's like, you're such a jackass!
Yes.
I hate you!
Nesta then goes towards Cassian and takes his sword, even though she's never tried to use a sword in her life. And the king lunges at her, but she, like, starts to kind of, like, lead him away from Cassian. And he obviously disarms her because she doesn't know what she's doing.
This is why the training would have been important.
100%.
Like,
yeah.
Come on, Nesta.
Really
like,
dumb.
You dummy.
He smacks her across the face then so hard that she, like, falls down. And he says, well, what else do you have? And she rolls back around and, like, throws her hand out and throws the last of her power at his chest. And, like, he goes flying. Which is good. But obviously it's not going to kill him.
Love it.
She goes over to Cassian and begs him to get up. And she's, like, trying to lift him, and she's trying to get him to move, but he just can't. Like, there's a bone sticking out of his thigh. He can't do that. He begs her to go, to run, and she says that she can't. And Cassian tells her he has no regrets in this life except this, them not having time together. And it's so sweet. And he kisses her, like, not passionately or anything. He's literally almost dying. Yeah. But he gives her a sweet kiss, and he says he'll find her again in the next world, the next life, and they will have that time together. And that, like, that gives me goosebumps. I love that line.
Oh, no, me too. It's so cute, but sad.
It is so sad. Of course, the king comes back, and he's pissed now because he actually didn't think Nesta would hit him. And there's, like, dark power and death, like, at his fingertips. And Nesta just covers Cassian with her body, and he holds her. And they're ready to just die together now. It's something. Feyre in this moment is, like, offering her soul to the cauldron. She says she'll give it anything just to save them. But, like, all the cauldron cares about is getting its power back from Nesta, so I don't think it's going to save her.
No.
The king comes up to Nesta and Cassian and calls them romantic but ill-advised, and then he raises his hand, and you're like, this is it. This is the end.
Yep.
But then he starts to lower his hand, and we're all really confused. But then Feyre can see a black blade through his throat. And
Whoa.
Yeah, it's not great. And Elaine is behind the king, and she just, like, rams the rest of Truth Teller through his throat and says, don't you touch my sister.
Oh.
Yeah. It's good times. Good choices.
It's like the one good thing Elaine does this whole book.
Yeah. But you're also like...
Way to go, Elaine. How did she get there?
How did she get there? It's interesting. But
I'm assuming she was just like saw everything happening and was like, oh no, my family, I gotta do something.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm just impressed that she actually did something.
Was she by herself when this occurred? Like not when this occurred, obviously, but like, so I know you said that she went to like this, they like took her to like this secure location.
Yeah.
Did they then leave her there by herself?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
But I wonder if she like could foresee this happening and then decided to make her way there. Like maybe she saw them die and then was like, if I get there first, I can do something.
Oh yeah, maybe. That's a good idea, yeah.
I wonder if we'll ever get anything on that, or if it was just like convenient. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the king is choking on his blood now, obviously, and the entire sword through his neck, and he's kind of in shock. And Nesta lunges to her feet, and she grabs the blade and twists it into the king's neck, basically until his head just is no longer attached.
Woo!
It's something.
It is something.
The cauldron, like, purrs in Elaine's presence, and it's, like, real in love with Elaine. It's so weird talking about the cauldron, because it's, like, it's a thing, but it does have a mind. Like,
yeah.
The cauldron realizes that Elaine loves the thief, and it doesn't want to hurt Elaine, so it knows that it can't hurt Nesta. So it's like, well, I guess I won't get my power back. And you're like, this is wild. Why does this thing love Elaine so much? It's wild.
Yeah. It's like an inanimate object, but it's an animate object at the same time.
Yeah. And it's like got a fixation on Elaine.
Woo?
Yeah, it's interesting. So Feyre, inside of the cauldrons, whatever's happening, sees Elaine notice their father and scream. So maybe it was just opportune that she was there. Maybe she missed that part during the vision or something.
Maybe,
yeah. But Feyre can't watch much more because the cauldron is retreating from them all now. So it's not going after its power anymore. On the way back, she sees the High Lords fighting, and they're giving themselves entirely to the beasts inside of them. Bryaxis is fighting along Grayson's men, and Draken and Marion are actually fighting Jurian.
What?
Which is... Yeah.
That is silly.
Yeah. You're like, there's a fucking... Well, actually, what happens is Mor comes up to them, and she starts shouting that this is the least of their worries because Hybern's armies are winning. And you're like, yes, why... Like, yes. Deal with this later. This is not also, in your best interest.
Did Jurian not say, when he revealed himself to be, like, on the good team, did he not say, I want to find them so that I can apologize for being an asshole?
Yeah, but I
guess... What is this?
He didn't... No, I think Feyre was like, she couldn't tell if Jurian was fighting back or if they were just attacking him. So, like, maybe he didn't do any fighting himself, but they are after him, and Mor's like, what the fuck, man? So, we don't actually see what happens there, but I'm assuming that they stop. She hears a roar then, and she recognizes that it's Rhys, even though he's in his beast form. And she can tell that he's faltering and that he needs help. And there's nothing she could do. She just ends up back in the present, and Amren is just slapping her in the face. And calling her a stupid girl and telling her to fight it. Which is, you know, something. Feyre then tells Amren that the king is dead and Amren will soon be too. And Amren just agrees and tells her she needs her to be a conduit. And she explains the Suriel showed her an unbinding spell for herself, not how to stop the cauldron. So she needs Feyre to unbind her from her Fey body so that she can be the immortal being that she is, and then take out the king's army, basically.
Right.
Amren then says she knew Feyre could control the cauldron by herself after she knew about the Ouroboros, which is kind of what we said. And, like, she's going to wipe away the army. Varian then shows up and just says no.
Like, how is everybody getting everywhere? It's as if people
That's
are just
what
walking across this battlefield like willy-nilly.
The battlefield must be tiny because everyone's fucking everywhere.
It's like 10 square feet. It's like, I'll just walk here now.
Right? Amren kind of starts explaining, and she says that, like, in her world, she used to watch humans, and they would fall in love, and they would hate, and they would build, and she always wanted more than what she could have as the being that she was. And she says she wonders if her father opened the hole in the world to let her go as a gift. And then she tells them it's been a gift all of the time that she was able to spend with them. And she tells Feyre to tell Rhys to leave a cup out for her. And she tells Varian, and I love this part in my romantic little heart, that she didn't understand love, but she thinks she could have learned with him. So sweet. Amren then, like, speaks the spell into Feyre's head and tells her, like, when she is free, don't run. It'll only attract her.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So,
good advice.
So she's not going to be herself in a little bit. So Feyre holds on to the cauldron and fights to say the spell with her whole being, because she tried to do a spell once before and got fucked up, so she's trying again. And then Amren is in the cauldron and there's water in it now, and she's going under. So.
Like, do they have to pour water in it? Does water magically show up? Like,
is it always full of water?
How do they transport it if it's always full of water?
Magic.
They have to get, like, a lid and put a lid on it.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. I don't
imagine, like, getting in that water after knowing other people have been in it?
I thought you were going to say, can you imagine airport security? I don't know why.
That, too. Can you imagine transporting 100-pound cauldron full of water through airport security?
Yeah. I thought that's what you were going to say. I don't know why, but that's where my brain went.
I was thinking, imagine getting in that water knowing other people have also been in it, and God knows what else has been in it.
I'm assuming it's self-sanitizing water. Oh my. I don't know, man.
Great.
Yep. So Feyre loses her grip on the cauldron, and, like, the ground starts shaking from below them, and basically the cauldron ends up breaking into 3 pieces. Amren explodes and light blinds them, and Feyre swears she can see burning wings, a crown of incandescent light floating just above her flaming hair. So she has a different form completely. She is just light and burning wings.
And she's got hair, so, like, is it bad? And I feel like this is going to be a reference that really dates me. But not actually dates me, but, like, it either she is a Winx. Do you remember the Winx? We are the Winx. We are the Winx. Come join the club. We are the Winx. It's either that, or she's, like, a legit fairy. Like, not fae, a fairy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, man. Or that's what the Winx are. But, like...
Yeah. I get that. I didn't think that for some reason. I was like, oh, she's just a beast with wings.
See, when I originally read it, I thought she was coming out as a dragon or something.
Oh, yeah. That'd be cool.
But now that the way you're describing it here, with burning wings, a crown of incandescent light floating above her flaming hair, makes me think she's more humanoid in...
Yeah. Yeah, because if she was a dragon, we'd probably get... And her face is a dragon.
Yeah. And she looks like a... But I think they do describe her as a fire drake. Do they not?
I think they said that she hoards jewels like a fire drake. They didn't... Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I don't know, man.
I kind of thought that she was like archangel type thing. Like,
oh yeah, could be.
Although they have more emotions in Crescent City than you would imagine. So like, could
it be an Asteri sort of a thing?
It very well could be. But I also wonder if it's like maybe the archangels in Crescent City have softened over time. And maybe their origin... Yeah.
I do think, in general, the Crescent City magic users are diluted in power compared to
other
this
worlds.
Like, I think Bryce being the exception, because she went deeper in her power than, like, anybody, right? Mm-hmm. And her, like, power reaches, like, an immense scale. She just can't control it or use it. Yeah. But I think, in general... Like, I would consider Bryce more along the lines of, like, Feyre and Rhys and them. But I think most everyone else are, like, way down low in terms of power usage.
Yeah.
Wattage, we'll say.
Which makes sense.
Yes. It does.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Anyway. So she's just there as, like, a being of light that possibly looks like a fairy. Mm-hmm. And... she just pauses to look at them, and then she goes after Hybern's armies. And Feyre hears Rhys yell out in, like, victory, in rage, in pain, and tell, like, his armies and his allies not to run from her. So, I don't know why all of Hybern's armies run from her, and that's why she kills them. It's just like, you'd think someone would stand still and not get killed, but nope. Amren's power starts to wear out, but she does get every last piece of Hybern's army on the field, in the boats, and, like, only once she, like, defeats the last boat, only light, bright, and clean, like, just light remains dancing on the waves, and then she just vanishes, and she's just gone. Varian is crying, which is sad. And below, their armies are celebrating, and, like, the cauldron is broken, which is obviously good. And Feyre kind of wonders if it was, like, unbound by the spell, or if Amren broke it when she came out of it. Like, who knows? And they're like, sweet, this is everything we wanted. We're all done.
Right. Yeah.
But, of course, no such thing. Feyre feels something. And she says, then the thing inside the cauldron is leaking into the world. And Feyre walks towards the pieces of the cauldron and just sees a void. And it's growing. And she knows, like, this doesn't belong in the world. And if she lets it keep growing, nothing is going to survive. Like, right. It's just going to take over. Like,
it's kind of like a black hole forming.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. This is the apocalypse now.
Yes. Yeah.
Rhys shows up then, and he's just, like, in shock, and he's asking her about Amren. He's asking her if she's okay, and she just lets him into her head and shows him everything that happened. Like, that she went over and could see everything, that she unleashed Amren, that now there is a fucking void growing.
Great.
Like, oh, good. I thought we were fine, and now we're fucked. And they kind of realize, like, the cauldron can't be destroyed or it'll take the world with them. And Feyre is absolutely panicking because she's like, we fucking saved everyone, and now we damned the world. Like, it would have been better to just let Hybern win, and at least the world would still exist.
Yeah.
And she looks at the book that Amren had, but she can't read it, and she's like, the only person that can read it is gone now, so she just throws it into the void. And Rhys just says that's one way to try. And you're just like, that was really dumb. Like, there's probably some other shit in that book that was important. You didn't have to throw it in the void. But Rhys asks her to be a conduit again. And to remake the cauldron, they're gonna need power. So he says, like, she can use his power to remake it, just be a conduit, and, like, they can at least try, because what else are they gonna do? He does make a few jokes, and he's trying to, like, lighten the moment for them, because he fucking knows. He knows what's gonna happen. And she reaches for his hand, and, like, they connect in their minds as well, like, form a little bridge, and she can feel the nothing that will consume the world when it is unmade. But she's just like, not today. So she holds the cauldron and is taking Rhys's power and funneling it into the cauldron. And she, like, basically starts telling the cauldron the story of Prythian, its job, what it was doing. She changes one part of Amren's binding spell to kind of make it a binding spell so that she can remake the cauldron. And she's, like, unafraid because she's there with Rhys, and she's, like, feels like this is all going well. And he gives her everything, and as she wells the cauldron, she's kind of just a vessel. And Rhys whispers, "I love you," in her mind, and they heal 2 cracks, and his power starts to fizzle out. So Feyre adds her own power, and then they get the 3rd crack to heal. So the cauldron is remade and whole, and she's like, oh my god, we did it, everything is great. And then she turns around, and she sees Rhys lying on the ground behind her, and at first she kind of thinks it looks like he's asleep, but then she's like, realizes she can no longer feel the mating bond. So Rhys is dead.
So, yeah, I can't. I'm so, like, although, to be fair, like, when I read this book, and we talked about this earlier, obviously, the inner circle cannot stay intact.
Yeah.
But I did not expect it to be Rhys. And Amren. And Cassian, really, because as far as we know, he is also, like, severely injured, if not dead.
Yeah. Which, like, kind of makes sense. Like, some people have to die. I 100%, like, all of the little crumbs that they were laying that Rhys was gonna die, I was like, yeah, he's gonna die. But I didn't think it would be permanent anyway. Like, I was like, they'll find a way.
Yeah.
They always do. Which is, you know. Yeah. It was just kind of like, I don't think it was necessary. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah. Considering, like, it lasts all of 30 seconds.
Yeah. It just is weird. But yeah. Well, we can get into that part now. But Feyre just starts screaming, and she's shaking Rhys, and Mor and Az show up. But she can't hear them over the silence in her head, and the realization that, like, Rhys's last I love you was a goodbye. It wasn't just, like, encouragement or whatever. It was like, he was saying goodbye. He knew that he was gonna die, and he kept his shields up because he knew that she would rather the world end than to live without him, which is intense.
It's also, like, it's a bit dumb, to be fair.
Yeah, 100%.
You would rather damn every single person on the earth rather than have the person you love die? That's a bit selfish.
Yes, 100%. Someone tries to take her away, but, like, she can't leave Rhys, and then Thesan is there, and he's checking Rhys to see if there's anything that can be done, because he has healing magic. But there's nothing that he can do. Tarquin ends up kneeling beside her and takes her hands and says, "I'm sorry." And that just shatters her. And she thinks of the Suriel, because the Suriel said, "Stay with the High Lord and live to see everything righted." And she kind of starts to think like it was all a lie. And then she can feel the torn scraps of the mating bond in her mind. And just like...
Heart, body, whatever.
Yeah, in her everything. And she just grabs onto them and begs him to just stay. And then she looks to all the High Lords gathered and says, "Bring him back." And she yells it too, which, you know, she's very upset.
Yeah.
But she says they did it for her, they can do it for him. But Helion says, like, she was human. It's different. You can't just bring back a High Lord. That's like, they don't know what would happen. Yeah. But she doesn't care. And none of them move. So she just starts to rally her power, and she's going to just break into all of their minds and force them.
Love it.
Which, yeah, I'm here for. But Tarquin steps forward and says, "For what he gave today and for many years before." And then Helion steps forward and gives a drop of his power, and then Callias, and then Thesan, and then it's just Baron left, according to Feyre. And Mor puts her sword to his throat and says she doesn't mind making one more kill today.
Yes!
And I'm like, just do it! Just do it!
Do it! Do it! Do it!
But she doesn't. Because he agrees to give his kernel of power. Feyre tries to give her own power since she is High Lady of the Night Court, but she can't figure out how, and she just growls at everyone, "Tell me how." And like Thesan like kneels down next to her and like explains everything until she finally gets it, and then she like puts her power into Rhys. And then she realizes, just as Tamlin shows up, that he hasn't given his power. And I'm like, how did you forget? How did you forget about your ex? That's like...
he is so inconsequential. He matters so little that she forgot he existed.
I know, but like, this is a big thing. Like, he's obviously going to be the hardest one to get it from. But surprisingly, she basically pleads with him and offers anything, and he walks over, and she's like kneeling next to Rhys, and he gives his power, and he says, "Be happy, Feyre." So I think it's supposed to like symbolically be like he's finally letting her go, which I think is like unnecessary and I don't love. But anyway, I'm glad he's not sticking around. So all of the powers are in Rhys now, and Feyre starts to like tell him their story, and she starts with Calamni, and she tells him that she thinks he was calling to her before they knew, and that's why she had to go out there that night. And then she tells him about how they fell in love, and like as she's telling their story to him, she hears a thump, and it's his heart. And Rhys says, if we're all here, either things went very, very wrong or very right. Which is funny. I like it. He then, of course, and like I'm glad this was here, but it's just kind of funny. He then tells all the High Lords that his power is his own, not theirs, which is good because obviously they gave Feyre their power. And they're pissed about it.
In other words, like he still has Night Court power. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have a little bit of everybody's the way Feyre does.
Yeah, which is like also like kind of convenient that he still has his mass amount of powers that is more than anyone else. It's like, oh, that's lucky of you.
Yeah.
He then asks someone to fish Amren out of the cauldron before she catches a cold. And Feyre just is like, how? And he says, she was there when the cauldron was sealing, going wherever you go in death. Like, Amren was on her way. And he just reached out a hand to see if she wanted to come back. And she basically took his hand. And now she is High Fae. She's no longer the being she was before. So that's obviously a lot. So Feyre then goes to her sisters because they're still over on the other hill where the king died. And she knows they need to, like, deal with their father alone. Cassian can actually stand now, and Feyre doesn't know if, like, Nesta healed him a bit with her magic, which is interesting, because obviously he was very injured, so the fact that he can stand is impressive. It could also be his Fae healing, but she doesn't know. But Moore takes him, we're assuming, to a healer, because, you know, he almost died.
He's still very hurt.
Yes, even though he can semi-stand, he is still very injured. They pass by the king's body, and it's just covered in crows just pecking at him. And Nesta spits on it as they pass, which is intense.
Love it. Go for it.
Elaine has a bucket of water, so she washes their father's face, and she combs his hair and beard and, like, straightens up his clothes, and then she lays flowers at his head and chest, and she whispers, "I love you," to him. And then Elaine asks if they should say a prayer, and Feyre kind of thinks, like, prayers aren't really human things, but she remembers under the mountain that that Fae girl that she had to kill recited a prayer, and it's the same one that Tamlin recited before to the fairy in Actar who had his wings cut off. So she recites that prayer, and then she uses the last scrap of her power to ignite his body. And they're just, like, standing there just staring at the spot where he used to be. And Lucien shows up. And he just sees Elaine, and he asks if she's hurt, and she says she's fine. And she asks about him, and he says he never wants to fight in another battle, but he's still in one piece. And Elaine kind of smiles faintly at that. And it's kind of like an interesting moment, because I'm like...
indicating there could be, like, things could develop between them.
Yeah. Like, it's hard because we've read a book and a novella after this, and we know what happens. But, like, she actually asks if he's okay, which I find more than I would have expected her to ask.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I guess they've all just been in a war. I guess she's trying to be decent.
I guess so. But Lucien then sees the scorch marks, and, like, he says he heard what happened, and he's sorry for all of them. And then Feyre hugs him and thanks him for, like, coming back with the armies. And he says he has one hell of a story to tell her, and to not be surprised if Vasa corners her as soon as the sun sets. And he tells them that their father made a deal with Vasa's keeper to let her come temporarily and help them with this battle, which is interesting.
Oh. Well, now that the dad is dead, though, are they beholden to that deal?
Yeah.
Is anybody?
Yeah, I guess I don't know, because, like, does the magic just disappear? Because, like, if it did, would she just be spirited back? Like, how does shit work? We don't know. Lucien then says that their father was a good man and loved them very much. And Nesta is just standing there, and, like, she hasn't reacted to anything that Lucien said. She didn't react to Feyre's, like, prayer over their father's body or their father's body burning. She is just completely shut down and not in a good place. Elaine is crying, and then Feyre, Lucien, and Elaine kind of, like, walk away together and let Nesta have a moment. Feyre asks Lucien what he's going to do now, and he says he'll stay to help, and then who knows? And Feyre, like, nudges Elaine next to her, and Elaine says he can come to Valaris. And, like, Lucien sees all of that, like, sees that obviously she did that, but he says it would be his pleasure. It's just interesting. I just, it kind of makes you feel like there could be something there.
Yeah. But, like, it also wouldn't surprise me if they did it that way, because, again, SJM has come out and said that we've already met Azriel's mate, and like you said before, unless she's gonna do, like, a throuple with Elaine, Lucian, and Azriel, like, even though Az has, like, seems like he's forming an attachment to Elaine, like, you know, giving her his prize dagger, like, rescuing, like, insisting that he rescue her, like, he seems like his attachment for more is going to Elaine. Yeah. I don't think they're gonna end up together.
As in Elaine, you mean?
Yeah. I don't think, I think Azriel has a mate, and I think it's gonna be someone else that we've already met.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
So I do think there's hope for Elaine and Lucian. I think she just has to let go of her sort of her human notions of love and embrace the mate part.
Yeah.
Because, like, she feels the mate bond, and if she accepted it, I think she would very quickly get over Grayson and be like, ooh, Lucian. Like, you know what I mean?
I do, but I also think it's kind of like, you kind of need to get to know a person.
Yeah, I mean, sure. But, sure you do. But I don't know. I don't know.
I feel like she's gonna have to get to know him before she can accept the bond. But, like, there's just no, other than this one scene, there's no indication that that's ever going to happen.
No.
Anyway, there's obviously, we don't know anything. We'll figure it out eventually in 7 years.
Yeah.
He tells them all about his journeys to get there, and then Feyre basically gets to her tent, and she, like, is hoping that maybe Lucian and Elaine will have a little talk, which is, like, nice of her to actually let them be on their own, since Elaine just fucking stabbed the king. Like, I think she can have a conversation with a man.
Yeah.
In her tent, Rhys, Draken, and Miriam are all there and, like, joking with each other, and Rhys is telling them about Feyre in general, and she asks them if Jurian is dead. And they say that Moore convinced them not to settle things with him. So,
yikes.
He's apparently with Lord Grayson's men now, and Miriam asks Feyre if she is friends with him, and she says no, they're not really friends, but every word he said was true, and he did help her a lot, which is true. Like, he helped her in many cases. Feyre then asks them if their island is still secret, and they kind of, like, apologize that, like, they couldn't be found and stuff, but she's asking for a different reason. She wants them to hide the cauldron there, and she says it needs to disappear before the High Lords start fighting over it. So they agree that they'll take it to their island.
But, like,
and,
like, how... I know, obviously, she has Rhys's word that they're good people, but, like, what if they take it eventually, like, they're not gonna live forever? What if someone in their camp decides they're gonna use it? Like, I feel like she is giving her trust over to these people maybe a little bit.
Yeah. She does, like,
quickly.
She does ask Rhys before she does it if he thinks it's a good idea, and he's like, yeah, sure. Like, but it is, I don't know, it seems very trusting, like you said. Yeah. But the other thing, too, is, I guess it's still kind of, like, it's not whole. Like, there's still some power that Nesta has that is the cauldron. So, like, it's not as powerful as it was, I suppose. And they would have a warning if it was ever going to be used, as long as Nesta's around.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something. I guess it's better in their hands than it is in one of the other High Lords' hands, really. Is kind of what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Feyre then tells them all that she wants to call a meeting. And then the next day, they have the meeting. It's, like, very quickly put together. They end up having it in like her family's old rundown estate that was destroyed. She says, like, the High Lords start to show up first, and, like, Eris nods to Rhys in acknowledgement of kind of, like, their deal and that he's going to be in touch soon, and Eris then...
When really, he's done nothing.
Oh, well, yeah, but...
on his side.
They still showed up. That's all he promised.
I guess.
Eris then looks at Lucian with sadness or regret, which is interesting, and... Tamlin shows up alone again, and he looks to Lucian, who kind of steps forward and says Tamlin's name, but Lucian is wearing Illyrian leathers, and Tamlin just shakes his head and walks away from him, which is, it's kind of sad. Others show up now, including Miriam and Dracum, and Nethel, who we heard about when Feyre was learning how to fly, and then basically, like, everyone else. And, like, some of the last to show up are obviously Jurian and Grayson, because they're humans and they had to get here on foot or horse. Do they have horse? They have horses. There were stables.
They have horses.
Yeah. Or horseback. And then, like, as night falls, Vasa shows up and sees Feyre and asks if she is Feyre Cursebreaker. Obviously she is. So then she says, her father was a great man and more of a father to her than her own was. Which... Wow. Like, how long could he have known her? This seems intense.
It does seem intense.
Nesta's nearby and is kind of like, what the fuck? And annoyed by it,
I
really.
can imagine. I would also sort of be annoyed.
Well, especially, yeah, I would be too.
If my father was a half-assed father for half my life, and then all of a sudden meet someone and they're like, oh, you're a better father to me than my own dad after a year, I'd be like,
yeah,
annoyed as fuck.
So annoyed. But Nesta doesn't really say anything, but Vasa says she's sorry, and then she asks Feyre if she can break her curse, since she's gonna have to return to, I think they even say return to the Death Lord soon or something. It's definitely brought up that he's a Death Lord. I just can't remember where. Yeah. Doesn't sound great. Feyre says she obviously doesn't know if she can, but she'll try. And Vass is kind of like, we'll discuss this later. Obviously, we're doing a meeting now.
Yeah.
And she says they'll also have to discuss the queens, because all of the queens apparently left the battle before it started, and all of their armies are still fully intact. So all of the other human queens have full-on armies, and that could be an issue. Nesta goes to, like, walk away, and Feyre asks her to stay, obviously. Like, she's supposed to be the emissary for the human world. And Feyre notices that she's holding one of their father's carvings, which is interesting, because Nesta's always, like, hated that that's all he would ever do, and was so pissed. Then Nesta asks her if she thinks that this will work, the meeting, and Feyre's kind of like, she knows everyone can hear her. So she just says she's willing to try, and she wants Nesta with her. And then they walk into the meeting room hand in hand.
Right.
Because this was Feyre's idea, of course she leads the meeting, and it's to discuss a treaty between human and Fey. And because she was both, she's kind of like, it can be done.
Yes.
The meeting lasts hours, and to kind of prove that human and Fey can live in peace, Feyre tells her whole story, and then Draken and Miriam tell their stories, and others tell their stories too, and some of them are, like, not as pleasant as, like, about living together and stuff. But there's obviously a lot to discuss, and they can't really decide on either rebuilding a wall or not. So they kind of are like, we'll get back to that later. And they decide they'll just get back to everything later. So they just have a very long meeting.
Nothing gets decided.
No. They agree that something will happen. They'll try to find peace somehow. But it's going to be a long road. So, as people are leaving, Jurian goes up to Feyre, and she asks where he's going now. And he says that Vasa offered him a place in her court, but he says he doesn't know what kind of court a cursed queen can have, which is exactly what we've been saying the whole time.
Yes, yeah.
She then asks him if he thinks that peace can work, and he says he does. So that's something from Jurian.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they obviously end up, all of the Night Court end up back in Valaris. And Amren is a little pissed, and she says that she's going to need to eat now. Which is just funny.
I love it.
Yeah. And then she comments to Nesta that she's surprised she didn't keep the king's head as a trophy. And Moore's kind of like, that's in poor taste. But Amren says she's entitled because she's entitled to say it, basically because she saved all their asses. And then Elaine says she's more cranky now than she was before. And you're like, oh, Elaine has some teeth now, I guess. Like,
this one time.
Yeah. And Amren kind of just leaves and goes out into the streets, and everyone kind of laughs at Elaine's little joke except for Nesta. And Nesta hasn't been eating, and she hasn't visited Cass. Like, he was healing, obviously. Feyre also isn't sure if her power died with the cauldron or if she still has power. So, like, she really doesn't know what's going on with Nesta, other than trauma in general. Moore, Az, and Cass go to get the good wine, and Rhys goes to go get some food. Basically, Rhys leaves to make sure that, like, the sisters can have a moment alone. Feyre kind of thinks about how she gave Lucian a note for Tamlin saying, thank you, I hope you find happiness too, which is nice, but, like, I don't know. I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of more of a slap in the face. It's like,
yeah,
you gave me my happily ever after, and now you're going back to your sad fucking court when your sad lands that I destroyed. Here's a note. Thanks. I just don't think it. I don't think it was necessary.
It's like one of those people that goes, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Like, but then she turns to her sisters and says, what now? And Nesta just walks upstairs away from them. And, like,
I love it so much.
I do too. She just goes to her room and ignores them. And Elaine says she doesn't think Nesta can, like, sort through her feelings with their father. And she asks Feyre if they should help. And Feyre says they will when Nesta is ready and when they are ready. Which is interesting. Yeah. Then Feyre and Elaine go to, like, where Cass, Az, and Moore are getting the liquor. And Elaine answers Feyre's question of, like, what next? And she says she wants to build a garden because she thinks that this place can use more gardens now that the war is over and shit. We see a garden that she built in this next scene. It's just like, sure, bye. But, like, there's more to life than just gardens.
Yes! I feel like that's Elaine's entire personality trait. She's soft-spoken and she gardens.
I know, but, like, I feel like there has to be more because, like, she has these visions. Like, that has to be happening more than we know because, like, we haven't had one in a while that has been outwardly vocal. Like, there has to be more to her. And, like, there is a theory that she's going to turn out to be evil, which is, like, interesting, but I also don't think it's going to happen. Like, I don't think she's going to be evil as her own person, but it would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah. So we jump over to Rhys's point of view, and he can hear everyone laughing. He's just in the kitchen, like, looking out over Elaine's garden. And he's just amazed that they all made it and can still laugh. And he's just, like, listening to Feyre's laugh until Cassian and Azriel show up with a drink for him. And they ask him, it's a really sweet moment, it is. They ask him why he's hiding, but he just, like, listens to Feyre's laugh again, and they just understand. And they tell him, like, this is real. And, like, tears start to well up in Rhys's eyes. And he says, let's not do this again for another 500 years. Which is fair.
Do we think that this is sort of our callback to our prologue? Remember when I was like, what is this prologue doing here?
Maybe, yeah, because it's his second point of view. Yeah, it's his, like, second time being in a point of view in this book, so that would make sense.
And it's like, he was looking for their bodies in the fight, but now this time they're coming to him after the fight.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like I'm reaching at straws here.
No, but I like it. I think it makes sense. Good job. Yeah, because we were very confused of why it was happening, so I think, yeah, that makes sense. They then ask him what are they going to do until then, and Rhys just listens to Feyre's laugh and thinks about their future together, and he says, we enjoy every heartbeat of it for the next 500 years until a battle, I guess. We go back to Feyre's point of view, and Rhys is on the balcony, and she goes out and she sits in his lap, and she's wearing the red lingerie from his fantasy in ACOWAR, where he was like, we'll go to the little shop. It was like before they were mates. Yeah. And she says she got it for free for saving them. And he tells her she is disgustingly rich. Like, there's no need to take things for free. And she says it doesn't mean she has to spend it. And he's basically like, good, you can start looking after the money.
But, like, to be fair, she probably should have given it.
Oh my god.
To the local vendors. Like, even if they offer it to you, I still think you should have paid for it.
I do too. Like, I get that she has trauma of being poor and it's hard to get past that, but maybe at some point she'll get past it and then go give them some money.
Maybe.
Feyre then asks him if Amren is still, like, his second, and he says if she wants to be, then yeah, of course. Which is, I think that's more for the reader than it is for them, but, like, it's kind of cool. I'm glad that he's not just throwing her out because she's no longer super powerful. Rhys then tells her that he heard everything that she said in those minutes when he was, like, coming back from being dead. And she tells him she never wants to feel that way again, and he says it's how he felt under the mountain. And then she tells him never to lie to her about something like that again.
I mean, fair point, man.
Oh, 100%. That was dumb.
Yeah.
Like, she could
have used I get why he did it. Yeah. But she could have just used more of her magic and not drained every drop of his first.
Exactly.
They could have gone Happy Taffy.
Right? It's so... Ugh. He then says he heard her and it made him stay before going on to that place. And she says, when it's time to go, we go together. And he says, it's a bargain. And she ends up with a tattoo on her left arm that is exactly like the original one she got in ACOWAR, except for, like, there's a band that's, like, halfway up her arm where her bargain with Bryaxis is. So it's not perfectly the same, but it's, like, the same enough.
Yeah.
Then they kind of mention, like, Bryaxis didn't come back. Like...
Right? Like, oh yeah, he wants to live in the library. Sure he does.
Yeah.
He's off causing mayhem as we speak.
Yeah. So, Feyre's basically like, I guess that means that I need to hunt it because I'm the one that made a bargain with it. And he's like, fuck yeah. So she asks if he'll come with her on this adventure and all the rest, and he says always. Then he shoots into the air, and they're just, like, flying over Valeris, and he shows her an image, and she, like, magics her wings into place, so I assume he was like, take your wings out. And so they fly together looking at the beautiful city and the rainbow and everything, and she knows that they're going to have an eternity together to see all of it, and it's a gift to them, basically, and she's, like, happy. But she's also in fucking lingerie flying. This seems...
That seems cold.
That seems ill-conceived. Like, did she forget that she's wearing lingerie? Did SJM forget she was wearing lingerie? Can anyone see them?
Yeah, that's something. I totally, didn't catch that.
It's not a big deal, really, but it's just interesting.
It's hilarious. So yeah, that's it. That's it for ACOWAR. We're done. I loved the ending. I think it was really good. I like how they went really happily ever after. Nobody died. It was great. Yeah. I love when that happens.
I do too. It's just kind of, there's a little part that's like, it just seems unrealistic, but it's also like the whole fucking book is unrealistic. So what are you expecting from a fantasy book?
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like, I feel like people will purposely kill off some characters to, further along the narrative or, to make the main character develop. But, I don't care for the realism.
Yeah.
No, I am totally okay.
I know you don't. Yeah. And, I obviously don't want anyone to die in any of the future books, but we are all, who is she gonna end up killing off? Yeah.
I hope nobody.
Well, you'd hope, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I guess any other final thoughts on the book or anything?
Just that even though this is the end, it's not the end. So SJM comes out with a novella that is primarily Feyre and Rhys's POV, and they get a lot of stuff still happens with Feyre and Rhys. There are a lot of questions still unanswered. So yes, while this ends their main story, their story is not over.
Yes.
So
yeah,
we do continue to see them in all of their mated happy glory.
Yeah, and Silver Flames, they are a big part of as well.
Well, and the novella is called Court of Frost and Starlight, and it is essentially a fluff piece.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Right? It is literally a fluff piece, showing how happy they are together.
Exactly. So
definitely... not that there's no conflict at all, but, primarily that's what it is. So if you are not sick of Rhys and Feyre, read A Court of Frost and Starlight, because it's just them being happy and loving each other.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But yeah, I'm really sad that we got through it so quick.
Yeah. It's just funny because there's so fucking much in this book. So much happens.
Yes. Yeah. We probably could have done 2 months of this.
Really, though. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure our episodes are a bit long, but that's just the way this book goes and most of SJM's books.
Yeah.
But
and now we've got my favorite series primarily done. Now we're gonna have to work through your favorite series from SJM, which is TOG. We've gotten 2 books done. We're gonna have to work a bit harder to get some of those in.
Yeah, but the next book is one of the better of. It's where it starts going uphill, not uphill.
Yes. No, you're right.
Is uphill the right word? I'm you don't want to be going uphill. It starts, the uphill for a...
Yeah, in a good way.
In a good way.
Upwards trajectory.
Yeah, not as in uphill, walking uphill, and it's very hard.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, yeah. So, I guess that's it for this week and this month. But if you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, you can email us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com. And be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Coffee and Co-Read.
Yeah, so next week we are reading a brand new book for the month of July. We are going to be reading book 2, Crooked Kingdom of the Six of Crows duology, by Leigh Bardugo. We are going to be reading chapters 1 to 8 next week, so make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you find content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.
Yeah.